2020 meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals to order, and the agenda is in front of us. We're going to get to that in a second. At this point in time, I'm going to ask Mr. Evans, do you have someone from your staff doing roll tonight? There's
Jackie Brent.
Jackie, there you go. Okay. Hi, Jackie.
Hi there. Hi.
Can we have the roll, please?
Sure. Mr. Clark?
Here.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Mr. Desmond?
Here.
Mr. Eisenbacher?
Here.
Mr. McCauley? Mr. McCauley?
Muted.
Here. Sorry, I was muted.
That's okay. Mr. Rahman?
Here.
Mr. Bossenbrook?
Here.
Okay, we have quorum, so we can proceed with our meeting here tonight. And I'm going to call on Vice Chairman Bossenbrook to read our rules and procedures for the public who are either watching at home or on some device somewhere in the world here tonight. So, our Vice Chairman Bossenbrook, please.
Certainly. The Zoning Board of Appeals is a group of 7 of your neighbors appointed by City Council to decide on requests for variances and other matters that are brought before them. A variance is a relaxation of the literal provisions of the zoning ordinance. This must indicate a hardship or practical difficulty with the land that would warrant the granting of the variance. The procedure for the Zoning Board of Appeals: the board will hear the items in the order that they appear on the agenda. When an item is called, the chairman will verify that the petitioner is present. Then the city administration will summarize the facts of the case. The petitioner will be given an opportunity to address the board to explain the justification for the action requested. After the petitioner makes their presentation and answers any questions that the board may have, the chairman will open the public hearing. The procedure is a little bit different here given the current online meeting, but normally any person wishing to speak on the request would raise their hand when recognized by the chairman and come to the podium. There's no podium here, but the speaker would identify themselves with their name and address, indicate their relationship to the property in question, whether, for example, a next door neighbor, live behind the property, etc., and state whether they are in favor of or against the variance request and give reasons for their opinion. Comments must be directed through the chairman. Comments should be kept as brief as possible and closely pertain to the matter under consideration. Only one person will be recognized by the chairman to speak at one time. At the conclusion of public comments, the chairman will close the public hearing. Once the hearing is closed, no other public comment will be taken unless in response to a specific question by a member of the board. The board will then make a motion to approve, deny, or postpone the request. In order for the request to pass, a minimum of 4 votes are needed. If the request is not granted, the applicant has the right to appeal the board's decision to Oakland County Circuit Court.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Bossenbrook. Move on to item number 3, which is approval of the minutes related to the November 17th, 2020 meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the City of Troy. Are there any questions by a member of the board or comments, or would someone like to make a motion who's a member of the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Eisenbacher.
I'd like to move for approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
Motion of approval. Mr. McCauley seconds that. Is that correct, Mr. McCauley?
Second that?
I'm sorry?
Yes, I second that.
Yes, sir. Okay. Any discussion on the motion by Eisenbacher and McCauley for approval? Hearing none, Ms. Ferenz, I believe we're prepared for votes.
Mr. Bossenbrook?
Yes.
Mr. Green? Mr. Green? I have to hear you verbally, please. Okay.
Oh, no,
Mr.
sorry.
Desmond?
The Desmond, yes.
Mr. Eisenbracher?
Yes.
Mr. McCauley?
Yes.
Mr. Rahman?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes. Motion carries. Now we move on to the approval of the agenda. And this is for members of the board. Are there any questions or concerns about what has been presented to us tonight by the city administration? Please be heard at this point. Seeing none, the agenda for item number 4 is set for the evening. And we have a number of items before us, starting with item 5A related to a vacant parcel, Black Oak parcel, reference number 88-20-11-226-004. Mr. Evans, could you please present to the board on this matter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd ask that IT allow me to share my screen.
Well, before we do that, I guess I did miss something. I didn't allow for introductions. And so I'm going to, just for the sake of the public watching, in one form or another, we are going to, I think you all have the same screen, so we're going to change it up a little bit here tonight. If you're a member of the board, or I'm going to allow you to please introduce yourself. And then we'll just go through the roster of who is a member of the board, and then we're going to introduce city supporting staff. So if you look to the upper left of your screen, that's me. I'm Glenn Clark. I am the chairman. And then we're going to go over to the gentleman in the blue suit. Can you introduce yourself?
Is it me?
Yes, sir.
So my name is Sadek Rahman. I'm a planning commissioner, and this year I'm a zoning board member.
Thank you, sir. And then next line down to the far left.
Ours don't line up with yours.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
think everyone gets a different arrangement.
Yeah, it varies entirely. You have to just pick people.
Okay, so here we have, we'll just ask him to wave, Mr. Eisenbacher, who's a member of the board. And then who else do we have next is Mr. Green, who's a member of the board. Mr. McCauley, who's a member of the board. Vice Chairman Bosenbrook, you've already heard from at this point in time. And then the last one, member of the board who's here tonight is Mr. Desmond. Mr. Desmond, can you wave? Thank you, sirs. And then we're going to move on to city staff. On my screen, I'm going, what's in front of me is Mr. Motsney, Alan Motsney. He is a city attorney, assistant city attorney for the city of Troy by day. And for our zoning board meetings, he serves as our legal advisor to the zoning board. And then we have there's Miss Ferenc, Jackie Ferenc, and she is with the planning department, and she supports the board in many different capacities, both at the meeting and then, of course, during Monday through Friday. And then finally, Mr. Evans, he is with the planning department. He is a city administrator whose primary role for us is to be our go-to person from the city administration, to be our liaison for all matters related to zoning. And that's what I have for tonight. And then there's going to be other petitioners and members of the public, perhaps, who want to address the board on these various issues before us tonight. Okay, back to Mr. Evans related to 5A. Mr. Evans, I believe you're muted.
I can't hear anything either if he's muted.
I am unmuted.
Mr. Evans,
you,
please
everybody.
proceed.
Yes, this is for property vacant on Black Oak. This is a variance to split a property into 3 properties. Parts of the variance involve allowing 2 of the properties to have a lot width and frontage of 30 feet. And the third lot to have 0 lot width and frontage. Now, the zoning ordinance requires each property to have 85 feet of lot width and frontage. This is an aerial of the neighborhood with the property outlined in red. And this neighborhood is south of Square Lake and west of John R. And there's a more close-up picture of the subject property. And everything you see overlaid in yellow indicates that the subject property and all surrounding property is zoned as single-family residential. And there's the layout of the property as proposed by the applicant. Now, this matter was heard by the board at last month's meeting, and the board postponed the matter to this month's meeting in order for the applicant to provide some additional information, and that information was included in your packet. I'll turn it back over to the board for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Is there a question from a member of the board? And I know we can go to the petitioner or the petitioner's representative here in a moment, but Mr. Evans, can you just address the fact or any facts that might be related to a change in the variance request from the petitioner compared to what you received before last month's meeting?
No, there has been no change. The applicant has provided, and what I'm showing are the 2 documents the applicant has submitted in response to the board concerns that were raised at last month's meeting.
All right. Is there a member of the board who would like to inquire of the city administration or legal advisor any information at this time?
Yes.
Related to 5A. I'm sorry, who is this?
Mr. Eisenbach.
Mr. Eisenbach, there you go. Yes, sir.
Quick question. With the requirement to have a frontage of 30 feet, and this is the perfect picture to have up, because the draft drawing extends only as far into the property as is necessary for 2 driveways, it's that lack of extending further into the property that gives them the lack of the 30 feet of frontage? Or is it? Okay.
The frontage is measured along the public right-of-way. So the only portion that we can measure is that part where, I'm going to switch around here, where Black Oak extends and touches the properties along the southern border. So that's where we have to measure the 30. So Black Oak is improved at 60 feet wide from right-of-way to right-of-way. And so the way the applicants proposed is 30 feet for each of lot 1 and lot 2.
Okay. Is there, given that wetland picture, it doesn't look like, and given the planned configuration of the properties, it doesn't look like there'd be any need for the road to go any further than to just service those 2 houses. Is there any other interest in why there would be a need for a longer road for the city?
Well, that I don't know. We haven't explored that. That might be a better question for the applicant to shed some light on any discussions he may have had beyond for the variance.
Thank you.
And any other member of the board? All right, we are going to call on the petitioner's representative or the petitioner himself, Mr. Afahiding. Are you here, sir, or your representative? Oh, I see it there. There you are. Are you going to address questions from the board yourself, correct?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
I can answer questions first, or would you like me to answer questions first? Would you like me to answer questions first, or just kind of briefly discuss the new information?
Normally what we do is you present any information you want within reason. Then we go to like a Q&A with the board.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chair. Good evening to the board. Can I request to be able to share my screen just for a couple of additional pieces of information that I wanted to present to the board? Okay.
Your screen sharing ability.
Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
So the new information I provided the board since the November meeting is the wetland survey map. Almost half of the 6 acres is unbuildable wetland. If this 6-acre property had no wetland, it would most likely be developed the same way similar parcels of land in Troy have been developed in the past 3-4 years. And this property would be maxed out in density with a cluster development that would have up to 22 single-family homes as shown in this drawing right here on your screen. Virtually every cluster development in the past got pushback from either the neighbors, planning commission members, or the city council members because of the density and the clear cutting or eliminating green space. What I'm requesting through this variance request is really a request to minimize the density and to preserve and protect trees and green space. Although I'm fully aware that these are not criteria considered by the ZBA for variance requests, I think it's worth mentioning that what I'm really proposing is much better for the neighborhood than a cluster development. And this screen right here actually has both of these options side by side, and that's what that 6-acre parcel would look like if we would have 22 homes on it. And I'd like to just go back and focus on the 5 practical difficulty requirements and how this variance request meets all 5. Here are all the facts and conditions required by the zoning ordinance as presented. A literal interpretation of the dimensional requirements would involve practical difficulties resulting from exceptional characteristics of the subject property, namely the available road frontage for lots 1 and 2. These characteristics relate directly to the property itself and are not of a personal nature. These characteristics were not created by the current or previous owner. The characteristics were created by the construction of Black Oak Drive, which provided access and frontage to the subject property. The subject property is also unique because of the significant areas of irregularly shaped wetlands located throughout lots 1, 2, and 3. Almost 50% of these lots of lot 1, 2, and 3 are unbuildable wetland. This natural vegetation, another exceptional characteristic of the property, must be protected per state regulatory requirements. Compliance with the lot frontage requirement is unnecessarily burdensome. The requested variance provides sufficient frontage on a public road without compromising safe access for both lots. The proposed variance will not alter the essential character of the surrounding area or otherwise result in any harmful or negative consequences. Quite the contrary, by granting the variance, the protection of the wooded and wetland areas will be maximized by minimizing the footprint of the impervious pavement needed to access both lots directly from the end of Black Oak Drive. The granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the ordinance, and the proposed variance will not impair the supply of air or light, and will not unreasonable increase traffic congestion, and will not increase the danger of fire or endanger the public safety, and in no way be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the general welfare. There are no practical considerations that support a literal enforcement of the lot frontage requirement in this instance, and granting the variance request will serve in the interest of justice. Thank you. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, sir. Is there a member of the board for this petitioner?
Yes, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
Mr. Eisenman.
Thank you. Based on the picture that you provided for what areas were flagged as wetlands, I can see that you have a hardship regarding the vegetation. The vegetation and topography. So topography would be the lower areas that are wet, and then the wetland plants and species that exist in those areas that are protected. The difficulty is what is the hardship of the length of the road relative to the properties? Like you've drawn it with the garages on the south side of each of the properties. If the garages were on the north side of the houses, is there a wetland that gets in the way?
So the way the drawing is shown, that's just an option of building that way. It doesn't restrict or doesn't limit the construction with the garage. The garage can actually be placed on the north side as possible, because it's basically flipping the footprint and the the geometry and the plan of the house, it can be flipped exactly mirrored the other way, and it wouldn't be affecting the wetland at all, as long as it's kept to the south.
Okay, so the
As close
variance
as
isn't
possible
relative to the house. The
Correct.
variance
The variance is not. Yes, the variance is not a request of where to place the home.
Okay. Yeah, and then looking at the picture that it was up earlier showing the wetlands, you've got extremely limited area on the property that is at all buildable.
Correct. So this property would not be developable to build anything standard the way a standard development would work, just the way that drawing shows right there. That would never be possible because there's just way too much wetland on that property. That cannot be disturbed. You cannot cross large areas of wetland with a public road, with a private road. So basically the restricted area for development, for building any kind of footprint there is really where those two homes are shown right as close as possible to the existing black oak.
Okay. And then the other portion, the lot 3 that you've requested to be split off, it looks like any use of that property, given the shape of the wetland, can only be accessed from the east side of the property, or the northeast portion of the property. And that the natural feature of the of the wetlands and the vegetation block any access from the side of the property, which is the west side of the property, which currently has access.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Another member of the board for this petitioner.
Hello.
This is Mr. McCauley, yes.
For the petitioner, have you had a wetland study done on this property?
The wetland study that was done is a study that was presented and submitted, that was requested by the board back in November. And that's the wetland survey.
Yeah, that's
the wetland survey.
A wetland. Have you had it? Have you had gone and had it done where they tell you what you can and can't do on that? I mean, they just showing me a map of that.
Yes, that's part of that map. Is part of that study that shows exactly the type of wetland, and it actually identifies every single region. And you can see that on that drawing, that it has it identified by different codes, and it actually identifies exactly what type of wetland it is.
Why didn't we not get that study?
I was asked to provide a map of the wetland, and that's what I submitted.
Okay. Also, is this a regulated wetland or not non-regulated?
It is all regulated wetland according to the report, and which means it's unbuildable. That
According to who?
I'm sorry.
It's regulated by who?
By the DEQ.
DEQ.
Correct.
Okay. I'd like to. I would have wanted that study because a map doesn't tell me everything. As I'm doing my due diligence on this, looking at different things, I'm not seeing anywhere what you're telling me. So that study would be huge in my eyes for as I look at this.
Okay, I would have definitely provided that. I just wasn't asked for that information. I was asked for a map of the wetland. But okay. I can submit that for sure.
Has Planning Commission seen this?
I don't think this is a ZBA request. I don't believe this was submitted to the Planning Commission at all because it has nothing to do with it's not a submitted project for the Planning Commission. It's a request for a variance.
Okay, so they didn't see it and kick it to us because you're looking for a variance, and so you came straight to us.
Correct. That's what I was asked to do by Mr. Evans.
Okay. Thank you.
Another member of the board.
Hello.
Mr. Eisenbacher. No?
Hello.
Everybody gets real small, so it's kind of hard to see who's that. Mr. Green?
There we go. Sorry. Mr. Epihedian, if you have, I would assume that study is digitized. Do you have that available to bring to the board at this time?
I don't have it available right now. I didn't have it available to open it or provide it. I can provide it probably within 10 minutes if I can find the file, but I don't have it ready now. But I have to see where I have that file.
I'd be interested in seeing that. I don't know. I know Mr. McCauley would as well. I don't know if we'll provide that time.
Mr. Green, can I just interject? Would you be amenable to asking the petitioner how many pages that document is for us to review anything? It would have to be obviously within reason. So if you're willing.
I mean, certainly. Mr. Apahedian, how many pages is?
If I recall correctly, that document is about 4 or 5 pages long.
That's the end of my comments for the moment.
Is Mr. Green, do you want to formally request that document to be presented to the board? And then we could go about other business if the petitioner can come up with it. If not, we could potentially postpone until next meeting if there's a majority of the board that's willing to do that. I can't speak for the majority. Any majority, it's really, your preference. You can request anything essentially. If that's your desire, you can make that known now. Because it sounds like the petitioner is willing to accommodate if he can just spend a little time doing that.
Far be it from me to suggest that we extend the meeting to do
not extend
review.
Rearrange.
Artificially lengthen it through either pausing or having a recess to do additional due diligence, properly, thoroughly reviewing the document. However, it looks like Mr. McCauley may have thoughts on the matter.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Mr. McCauley.
For the petitioner, if we postpone this for one more month, would that cause you any hardship?
It would. I can provide that information that you requested within the next 10 minutes. I guess if you move on to the next item and just on the agenda, and I can come back to that if that's an option. I can pull it up right now. I'm trying to pull up the document, trying to find it.
So you're saying us postponing you to the January meeting so you can provide us the information so we can look at it and research it, that would cause you a hardship in moving forward with this project?
Yes, any postponement does create a hardship.
Okay.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
We can just shuffle our agenda potentially, and that gives us time. We've got enough items on the agenda to give Mr. Apahedian time. Also, I believe on page 33 of our agenda is the map out of the study. Hopefully my colleagues were able to see the what it looks like an engineering map of the wetlands areas with the color coding and shading for what's where it's connected and where the boundaries are relative to the property and its access easement to John R.
Thank you, Mr. Eisenbacher. I would agree with Mr. Eisenbacher. Just moving on with the next item and postponing this item A does not artificially lengthen the agenda. We're going to go through item B regardless of what happens right here and right now for the next few minutes. So, if there's somebody who would like to propose through a resolution to postpone it and create a new item and renumber or re-letter everything to make this now item 5C and everything else gets bounced down one letter, that's a motion that can be entertained and would be appropriate from the chairman's perspective, depending on what the majority wants to do. It's up to the majority. Mr. Green, no, I'm not sure who was next, but Mr. Green, please.
I would move that we shuffle the agenda as you have noted, that we move this to item 5C to allow the petitioner time to retrieve the document in question and provide it to the board for review, and further
that the board, take a 15-minute recess prior to taking up item 5C to allow members of the board to do their due diligence with the materials provided before resuming and discussing.
Okay, very good. So just to clarify, of course, it's not seconded yet, but if somebody seconds it here in just a second, seconds Mr. Green's motion, then 5A would become 5C, D would become E, E would become F, and so forth. Kind of like following the alphabet in kindergarten, right? It's pretty simple stuff. Is there a second to Mr. Green's motion before we discuss any further?
I will second it.
I'll second.
I would like to make an amendment to the motion.
Okay, hold on, that's not germane yet because I haven't accepted a second. There was somebody who spoke before Mr. Desmond. Was that Mr. Eisenbacher?
Eisenbacher said to, either way.
Okay, so it's the Green Eisenbacher motion to change this variance request to item 5C, and all relevant variance requests will then follow suit with the change in letter code. And then there is some amendment that is to be offered by Mr. McCauley. Mr. McCauley.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to offer the amendment. We move it to the last item on our agenda so that way we can get the other applicants out of the way and then take that break to to review it before we meet with the petitioner. So that way we can not keep everybody online all night.
Second.
Sure. Mr. Green seconds Mr. McCauley's motion. So item number, if the amendment is agreed to by a majority, item 5A essentially changes to 5F and nothing else changes. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Before we go there, I just want to call on Vice Chairman Bosenbrook, just so this is not lost in the bouncing ball that's going down the court right now. And that is the Vice Chairman is charged with sharing with us public comment, in one fashion or the other. And why don't we get to that right here, right now, before we go to the amendment vote, just so everybody on the board has a greater understanding if there's input from the public on this important matter. Vice Chairman Bosenbrook, do you have anything for us?
I don't. I think for purposes of these Zoom meetings or these go-to meetings, Ms. Ferens has been collecting the public comments by email or voicemail, so right. She's the one reading them off.
Right.
Otherwise, I'm happy to do so.
I just wanted to make sure that was this breaks with our precedent, but of course, thank you for pointing that out, Vice Chairman Bosenbrook. So we'll bounce it over to Ms. Ferens. Do you have anything for us?
No, there's been no public comment submitted for this.
Thank you. And then Mr. Green, who is wanting to be heard under discussion for the amendment. Is that correct?
More just a point of order or point of clarification. I believe that when a motion is seconded and on the floor for a vote, with an amendment also seconded and on the floor for a vote, other discussion cannot be considered. So had there been any comment, I think that would have had to wait.
That we always have to have the public comment before we take in a vote. So I should have held off on the amendment, but even if there was a motion for approval, we have to take that into consideration and share that with the public. So that would be, half empty, half full, regardless. That's how I decided to take care of business. So at this point in time, is there any discussion on the amendment? So for clarification, it's not just changing item 5A to 5F. It also includes a 15-minute standard ease provision for the board to have time to use the restroom and also review whatever the petitioner was able to present to the board. And then a yes vote on the amendment would agree to that provision. And then, of course, if that's if that carries the day, then there'll be a second vote, which is now the main motion, which is to essentially push it down the agenda, kind of open-ended, because now we have more clarification from Mr. Green. If that makes sense. Is there any discussion by a member of the board? Hearing none, Ms. Friends, I believe we're prepared for a vote on the amendment.
Mr. Eisenbacher,
Yes.
Mr. McCauley,
Yes.
Mr. Bossenbrook,
Yes.
Mr. Rahman,
Yes.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Desmond.
Yes.
A motion carries on the amendment. Now, essentially, the next motion is essentially the same thing, but it kind of makes it whole and pulls it all together, if you will. And so, once again, this is to postpone it on the agenda. Clarification is the amendment said it would be 5F with the 15-minute stand at ease recess. And is there any discussion on the main motion now by a member of the board? Seeing none, Ms. Friends, I believe we're prepared for a vote.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Desmond,
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher,
Yes.
Mr. McCauley,
Yes.
Mr. Rahman,
Yes.
Mr. Clark,
Yes,
Mr. Bossenbrook.
Yes.
motion carried. Okay, so we have our order of business now, and we move on to item B, but I would like to circle back to the petitioner, and it looks like he went offline because maybe he's emailing it, but he's going to need Mr. Evans' clarification as to where to send that email. I don't know if he's going to send it to the info at or ZBA public comments or maybe to your city email. I'm not sure, but let's just confirm that it's arrived in someone's inbox before we're done with item B. All right, so now we move on to item B, which is related to 224 Web. And Mr. Evans, are you prepared to address the board on this matter?
I am. If I could share my screen, please. As the chair indicated, this is regarding property at 224 Webb. The applicant is looking to split a parcel of land into two parcels, and as proposed, both resulting parcels will be less than the minimum parcel area required, and one of the resulting parcels will have less road frontage and width than required by the ordinance. Now, this property is located on Webb, which is in the neighborhood north of Waddles and west of Livernois. I'd ask that somebody mute their microphones. I'm just getting some feedback. Subject property is located at the northeast corner of Webb and Virginia, outlined in red here. Everything you see on this map is all the properties are zoned single-family residential. This is the survey the applicants provided with Virgilia on the left and Webb at the bottom. The corner parcel satisfies the lot frontage and width requirement, but as proposed will be 13,844 square feet. Now the ordinance requires a minimum lot area of 15,000 square feet. The second parcel is deficient on lot width and frontage. It's proposed to be just over 98 feet width and frontage, and the lot area is proposed to be 13,571 square feet, also less than the minimum required 15,000 square foot lot area. So those are the two variances the applicant is requesting. I'll turn it back over to the board for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. As a member of the board for city administration or our legal advisor on this matter. All right, we can move right along to the petitioner. Mr. Manassi, is that how you pronounce it, sir?
Maniaci.
Okay, not close, only in horseshoes, right? Well, welcome, sir. And I understand that you are representing yourself here tonight before the board, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, welcome. You want to address the board on this matter?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for addressing this matter, especially during these interesting times that we're having right now. So this is new to me on Zoom, so if I fade out, just bear with me. As you can see, we're taking a single lot in a community that has many different aspects of subdivision lots, some much smaller, some equally sized, and even the lot next to us, adjacent to us, has a lesser frontage than we do, that we're requesting it for this evening. New subdivision to the west of us has lots that are much smaller, and these two lots will face that subdivision and will be larger than the subdivision lots. We believe that this is an appropriate division of the lots and would fit in harmoniously with the neighborhood. Building two new homes, somewhat consistent with the new subdivision across the street. And I'm willing to take any questions.
All right, thank you. Is there a member of the board, Mr. Eisenbacher?
Hello. Looking at the map, it looks like the street that the property is currently on, Virgilia,
Correct.
is not paved.
Paved.
It is paved?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is paved.
Okay. In the subdivision that you're building that's across the street from these properties, is that using the lot averaging or the cluster option? And are those streets going to be public streets or private streets?
So Virgilia, the adjacent lot to this property, is a public street. The subdivision did use the cluster option and was able to preserve 8 acres of forested wetlands when we developed that subdivision. This property became available after we developed the site, or we would have included it into the whole project as a, so it could have been consistent. And at that time, it was not available and became available after we developed. Virgilia is public as well as web. Both of these lots would be facing Virgilia with the homes across the street in the subdivision.
Okay, so that would lead into my first follow-up is, are these two houses going to be part of the subdivision or are they independent from the subdivision then?
We would like to make them part of the subdivision, but because of the cluster option, they will be independent.
Okay, thank you.
Another member of the board? Okay, we are going to, in the good old days, we'd say, okay, thank you, Mr. Petitioner or Representative, hey, please have a seat. But of course, that isn't the case with the go to meeting. Now we're going to just bring this back in front of the board for any discussion, potential motion or inquiries of our city administration or legal advisor. Is there a member of the board who'd like to be called upon? Mr. Evans and then Mr. Bosenbrook.
Mr. Chair, if the board doesn't have any further questions, would it be appropriate to get public comment in the record before discussion started?
Mhm. Okay, that's advisable. Let me just see if there's a procedural issue here that Vice Chairman Bosenbrook has. Mr. Bosenbrook?
No, that was my question. I was wondering if there was public comment on it.
So, and by the way, that begs the question regarding item 5F, which was 5A. We did the public hearing last meeting, so there will not be a public hearing on that particular item. Regarding item 5B, we are going to have the public hearing at this point in time. There's a member of the public who would like to be heard. Please indicate at this point in time, and I will call upon you and recognize you related to parcel 224 Web. So member of the public, seeing none, I'll close out the public hearing and then bring it back to Vice Chairman Bosenbrook. Is there, I'm sorry, Ms. Ferenz, is there any information from the public on this matter?
There has been no public comment submitted for this matter.
Thank you very much. And now back to the board table. Is there a member of the board who would like to be recognized? Is there a member of the board who would like to be recognized? Both either for possible action, inquiries of city administration, or legal advisor. Mr. McCauley.
I went over and looked at the property and looked at the area and looked at what the development was happening. Virgilia is a brand new street now where before it was not. So the builder has provided new public streets for us in that area. I look at the size of the lots in the development and the lots that are abutting to this. I look at the difference of the lot size and the frontage. The frontage is less than 2% off, and to be fronts to Virgilia, and also the square footage of the whole entire lot is less than 10% off. I look at this as this is kind of a redevelopment of that area. There's a couple lots to the north that I could see potentially becoming available, that they would continue to finish that whole side of Virgilia, so both sides are consistent all the way down. So I'm going to make the motion to petitioner. I'm going to read it here real quick. I make the motion that we on 224 Web by Joseph Mancini for Mondrian Properties, that we grant for the following reasons. The exceptional characteristics of the property and the variance sought to make the compliance dimensional requirements are more difficult than would be the case for a greater majority. I believe that he meets that. The characteristics of the dimensions are related to the premise. The characteristics which make the compliance of dimensional requirements shall not be of personal nature. It's not. It's to the nature of the size of the piece of property. The characteristics which make compliance that are not created by the current. It's not created by the current order of the previous owner, and I don't believe this is harmful to the area. So I make the motion that we grant the petition.
There's a motion for approval for item 5B as Macaulay's rationale. Is there a second?
Desmond seconded.
Mr. Desmond did not second it until I read it. Mr. Desmond, did you want to second that motion?
Yes, I want to second that motion.
Yes. Okay. Is there any discussion on the Macaulay-Desmond motion by a member of the board? Okay. Hearing none. Ms. Ferenz, I believe we're prepared for a vote.
Mr. McCauley?
Yes.
Mr. Rahman?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Bosenbrook?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Desmond?
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbrecher?
Yes.
Motion carries. Congratulations, you have your motion or your approval for the variance request. Item number C,
Thank you, everyone.
Congratulations, Mr. Maniaci. Have a good night.
we have a previous motion that called for a break now and for the petitioner from 5F to present some information regarding a survey or a study. Mr. Evans, do you have any record of said survey or study on file now?
I have received something, yes. And Ms. Ferenz, if I could, can we clarify that the motion was to put this to the end of the meeting? That,
Right, but Mr. Green wanted time for the board to review it, and that was after this item B.
gotcha.
To
Mr. McCauley's motion shifted that, or amendment.
Amendment.
My amendment was to move everything to the end for item A and get rid of items B, C, D, and E prior to us taking the break and us dealing with the new item F. So that way we can get these homeowners, petitioners out of here and then deal with the last item.
It's a good idea to move.
But that was those were for any action items. This would not be considered an action item. So, I mean, if the board wants to wait to right before item F, that's completely fine. It doesn't really matter, but I interpreted that motion for action, and a stand at ease recess is not an action item. If that's the will of the board, we can wait until we're done with E. Make sure that we have it on file, all in our inboxes. For those of us who have a device with us, or Mr. Evans can then make it available on the screen for everyone's review. Is that what the majority would like? Is that fine?
Yes.
Okay. So now we move on to item C, 4857 Rivers Edge. Mr. Evans, could you please present on this matter?
Yes, I asked my screen be shared. It's requested IT allow me to share my screen.
Yeah, you have sharing capability.
Yeah, you're the presenter.
Okay. Does everybody see the item C there listed then? Okay.
Just on the agenda. Maybe somebody else sees it that I don't.
No.
No.
Okay, I'll just go to the agenda. So they're requesting to add on to the house, and they requested the addition will be set back 39 feet 3 inches from the rear property line, where the zoning ordinance requires it to be set back 45 feet from the rear property line. As shown in your agenda, the property is located on River's Edge, which is in the residential area south of Long Lake and west of Coolidge Highway, specifically at 4857 River's Edge. And the survey that the applicant has provided indicates the proposed house addition will be set back 39 feet 3 inches from the rear property line. The zoning ordinance requires that the house and any additions to the home be set back 45 feet from the rear property line. They want to propose a single story addition, and it's an exercise pool room, and details and floor plans and elevations have been provided in your packet. And I'll turn it back over to the board for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Is there a member of the board for city administration? Seeing none, we will now call upon the petitioner or his or her representative. There's someone who'd like to be recognized. Greta? Ms. Martin, do you
Yes.
represent the petitioner?
I am the homeowner.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
Would you like to address the board on, summing up your request?
Absolutely. Thank you for listening. We are asking for a variance of the 45-foot rear yard setback for a number of reasons, primarily for health and safety of my own. We're hoping to build a 12 by 15 exercise room. The dimensional variance is 6 foot 2 inches at the most aggressive point in the corner. And as it moves parallel to the lot line, it diminishes because the lot line is a little bit, I'm going to use the word wonky, the way the house is set on it. We've pared this request down to as small as a room as I possibly can put on the property for this particular project. And there's really no place else on the house that it could go that makes sense. The area that this would be in is very secluded. No one directly affected neighbors will even be able to actually see this addition because of the foliage in the yard. My rear neighbor, because he's on a corner lot, is only 15 feet from the rear lot line. I don't know if you've got the drawing in front of you or not that was in the packet. The reason I need this addition and this pool so desperately, I started this year with my 5th joint replacement. I have a myriad of orthopedic issues, back issues that have been from personal injuries of one sort or another, and severe osteoarthritis. Because of my immobility and my disabilities, I can only do non-weight bearing exercise and have been going for the last 10 years or so to the Beaumont therapy pool under physical therapy prescription to do my workouts. Well, 3 months after my knee replacement, just as I regained my mobility, COVID hit. The pool shut down, all pools shut down. And the pool that I have been prescribed, that I go to, no longer offers the program that was prescribed for me. So I'm really at a standstill with my being able to sustain my mobility at this time. And what this addition would allow me to do is to stay in this home, which is a ranch home, which suits our needs perfectly. We love Troy. We've lived here since 1987, not in this house, but in Troy. This is not a fast healing process for me. This is something that will be ongoing. My hope is to be able to live in this house and be able to sustain the mobility I have and perhaps increase it. And this is something that I would use daily. So I'm hoping that you see the need that I have for this and can grant me the variance to 39. What is it? 39 and I believe it's 39.2. I don't have that in front of me. I'm sorry. I'm hoping you will give us our variance.
39 feet, 3 inches.
3 inches. Thank you. I thought it was 39.2.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, ma'am. Is there a member of the board for this petitioner? Mr. Green.
In your submission, you note that effectively there's not a good other spot on the home. You actually specifically note a couple of places where structurally it can't handle it, but theoretically you could put it on the front, basically, is the only other major location, just theoretically. But I agree with your note there that is not that would not comport with the feel of the neighborhood, and neither yourself nor the neighbors would probably appreciate that.
It wouldn't be aesthetically pleasing.
Agreed. And then there was one other location. I think it was right off the dining room or something, but onto the deck where the deck is. I understand the not wanting to take out the deck. And also that the dining room is not, it doesn't feel as natural to go from the dining room into a pool. Have I missed it? Would that theoretically fit within the restrictions of the ordinance?
Joe, perhaps you
Probably fit.
I think it might fit, but the problem lies with the way the house is configured as well. It would be basically where the deck is, but it would have to wrap around, and there's windows from the living room and there's a fireplace there that would be sort of it just doesn't work with the floor plan either. Not only does it not make sense to use that, and we'll lose a large part of an area that we use daily, weather permitting, from spring to fall. It just doesn't configure properly on the house with the way the fireplace and the windows in the existing areas are.
From a floor plan
aspect.
And from from that perspective, it sounds like, and I'm not sure about the visibility of it. I'm struggling to visualize it. It sounds like while it wouldn't be on the front of the house, that wouldn't really fit the structure of any of the other homes around either.
No, and actually, in that location, two of my neighbors would be able to see it much better.
Yes.
So it would harm the feel of the neighborhood to actually put it in the other location.
Way more visible.
Yes, it would be way more visible.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Green, this petitioner's representative, Mr. Novitsky, would like to be recognized only if you're willing to take the question or point.
I certainly am.
Okay. Please proceed for a short amount of time.
Thank you. The house is configured with the public spaces that are more appropriately nested together where the deck is. To put a private pool, an exercise pool here, would devastate and destroy the ambiance of the home and the utility of the home. This corner of the lot is very secluded, very private, off the master bedroom, and it won't be adjacent to anybody else's space, windows, or viewing. So we think it's the best fit on this lot. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. That sounds sensible to me. It's not very personal if the property becomes useless to anybody because it's not functional anymore.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I was looking at sort of to Mr. Green's point. I was looking at the site plan on page 54 of our agenda packet, and it looks like if the pool were moved closer to the middle of the house, the variance would actually be greater because of the pie shape of the property. And it looks like,
correct.
Other than the pool area, or not the deck area, which the petitioner's agent just addressed, this is the front of the house. This is the least invasive location for the request.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Novitsky, you're out of order.
Excuse me.
Okay. Is there another member of the board who would like to be recognized at this time, or any for possible attention for action, inquiries of city staff, or the legal advisor? Okay, we are going to do the public hearing at this point in time, and if there is a member of the public who would like to address the board on this matter, please indicate at this moment in time, and I will recognize you in order? See none, we'll close out the public hearing and then ask Ms. Ferenz if there are public comments via email and so forth, written letter that have been submitted.
There is one voicemail. I'm going to play it. If you could let me know if you have trouble hearing it.
Yes, ma'am.
If it should be playing, we are not hearing it.
My name is Tina Vecchione. I live at 4243 Renee Drive, Troy, Michigan. I am calling about the lady that wants to put the swimming pool in the portion of the front yard. And I would just like to say that I am against that. I don't know if we'll have the opportunity as citizens to vote or voice our opinions, but if there is an opportunity for this, could you please call me back? Because I would be happy to do that. My phone number is 586-246-6660. And again, my address is 4243 Renee Drive, Troy, Michigan. And the last name is Vecchione, Vecchioni. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ferenz.
You're welcome.
Anything else from you? Ms. Ferenz? No.
I'm sorry.
Anything
That was
else
the
from
only.
you?
No, I'm
Okay.
sorry. That's the only public comment.
Yep. Mr. Eisenbacher.
The person who just had the message said 4243, and I can't see that on the map anywhere near the property. Is that
It was a
person?
different street. I remember hearing that. It wasn't River's Edge. It was something else.
I can't see where their property is relative to the applicant.
Did you want Ms. Ferenz just to try to?
Or Mr.
Oh,
Evans raised his
She's on Renee Drive.
Yeah, I knew it was
RENEE.
Picking up the chair from the queue, if I could share my screen, I've just pulled up the property location on Renee, and I could just show everybody if that's the will of the board.
Mr. Evans, please.
And now, IT, I would ask that my, thank you. So 4243 Renee is near Rochester and Waddles.
Okay. Where's River's Edge?
Let me take a look here.
I lost the arrow. Sorry.
It's
That's
distant.
Renee. Just and River's
Miles
Edge
away.
is at Long Lake and Coolidge.
It's 4.6 miles as the road drives.
Okay, there'll be order. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Eisenbacher. Do you, anything else on that note?
No, thank you for the clarification.
Sure. Mr. Evans did that for you. Another member of the board at this time, taking care of the public hearing. We've taken care of the public communications. Still before the board. Vice Chairman Weisenberg.
Just going back quickly to the public, the last of the voicemail, I believe she said, did she say that she thought that the pool was going in the front yard, but this in fact is going to the backyard, correct? I just want to clarify that for the record.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Green.
From what I can see and from what I've heard, I'll just walk this through. What I see here is that the problem is this thing is on a wedge, right? It's not like most of the other properties around there. It obviously this relates directly to that property, not anything else. And it's not personal. The characteristics of the wedge, that's not personal, and nor is it of the house, that the house is structured the way it is. That's how the house came. That's how they moved in. I don't know if this house was built for the current owner or for the previous owner, but based on what I know, that's not. It's not. I don't think it's the current owner. So certainly not the property lot, which is the main issue at odds anyhow. And as per my questioning and discussion, this is actually the least invasive and most hidden way to possibly go about this. So I think I'm ready to put a motion on the floor to approve this variance. Per essentially what I've stated. Let me find the language.
Was that officially a motion?
That was not yet a motion. That was like a preamble to a motion.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Desmond.
Okay, yeah, there's Mr. Green has not fully completed his period. So when he's done, then there'll be an opportunity for someone to make a second if there's interest. Mr. Green.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Chair, Mr. Chair. The variance for, I have to skip back and forth. Apologies. For Mr. Joe Novitsky, on behalf of Tom and Greet, for 4857 River's Edge. Be granted for the following reasons. The applicant has demonstrated that the exceptional characteristics of the property for which the variance is sought make compliance with dimensional requirements substantially more difficult than would be the case for the great majority of properties in the same zoning district. As I clarified, characteristics of the property which shall be considered include exceptional narrowness, shallowness, smallness, irregular shape, which this certainly has, at least one of those, topography, vegetation, and other similar characteristics. B, the characteristics which make compliance with dimensional requirements difficult must be related to the premises for which the variance is sought, not some other location, which this is. The characteristics which make compliance with the dimensional requirements shall not be of a personal nature, which the shape of the lot is not, nor the form of the house that she is attempting to gain a variance to modify. The characteristics which make compliance with dimensional requirements difficult must not have been created by the current or a previous owner, which they were not. And the proposed variance will not be harmful or alter the essential character of the area in which the property is located, will not impair an adequate supply of light and air to the adjacent property, or unreasonably increase the congestion in public streets, or increase the danger of fire or endanger public safety, or unreasonably diminish or impair established property value within the surrounding area, or in any other respect impair the public health, safety, comfort, morals, or welfare or the inhabitants of the city, as was previously noted. The petitioners, the homeowners whom the petitioner represents, talked with the neighbor who would be impacted by this, and they were amenable to it. And the configuration that would be built if this variance is granted would actually not impact, as opposed to the other alternatives which may fit within code.
Okay, let me just stop you there, Mr. Green. That's really for discussion, that portion. Is there anything else germane directly, specifically to the motion? And then we can come back to you under discussion if you care.
I mean, that was a motion.
Okay.
Per the template.
I'll second it. Desmond.
Seconds. Yeah, hold on, Mr. Desmond.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hold on 1 second. There's a motion by Mr. Green and Mr. Desmond for approval related to item 5C. Is there any discussion? Mr. Desmond?
No, I mean, I just see in a regular lot here, this is pretty much, dead end for what we are looking for variance. So, that's, on that, everything else you said, I also agree with, but that is the key element, what's happened with this property. So that's why I am in support of this.
Very good. Thank you. Is there another member of the board like to be recognized? Ms. Ferenc, I believe we're prepared for a vote.
Mr. Rahman?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Desmond?
Yes.
Mr. Bossenbrook?
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher?
Yes.
Mr. McCauley?
Yes.
Motion is agreed to, and so the petitioner has their variance request. Have a very good night. Item 5D is related to Mr. Leninger.
Thank you.
1041 Paddock.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm done.
Congratulations.
It is so great.
Thank you.
We're having, we're
Microphone.
hearing people who dropped off the video. David, with IT, can you correct that if possible? Is Mr. Leninger, I saw him earlier. Is he here now?
He's here.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Okay. I've already called upon you, sir. So if you want to proceed.
Staff first.
I'm sorry. This crazy carousel of screens on my computer. I'm at City Hall right now. Yes. Mr. Evans, would you please proceed presenting to us on 1041? This is related to item D, and we're going to apparently hear from Mr. Leninger on item E here in a minute as well. So, Mr. Evans.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for IT. I do see I'm the presenter, but I don't see anything on my screen or my pop-ups that allow me to share my screen. If there's a way you can tell me something quickly, otherwise I'll return the presentation to you and you can send it back to me.
You should just have to click the screen icon.
You have to move your mouse to that area first.
Got it. Very good. Thank you. Okay. And this matter is located at property at 1041 Paddock. This involves a home addition that is requesting a setback of 39.79 feet from the rear property line when the ordinance requires the addition to be set back 45 feet from the rear property line. The subject property on Paddock is outlined in red. The neighborhood is north of Waddles and east of Coolidge Highway. Specifically, it's on the south side of Paddock, just west of Northfield Parkway. And there's a close-up of the property. The applicants provided a survey, and in this instance, it's flipped 180 degrees. But as you can see from the top part of this survey, with the location of the proposed sunroom, it's not going to be 45 feet from the rear property line, and the ordinance does require it to be that far. The applicant has provided us some elevation drawings of the proposed sunroom, and in order to proceed, they're requesting a variance from the board tonight. I'll turn it back over to the board for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Is there a member of the board related to 5D, city staff and or our legal advisor? Let me see. Now everyone got small, so it takes a second. Mr. Green. Mr. Green is muted. I don't know.
Thank you. Sorry. As you say, these meetings, yeah. Mr. Evans, if you have something in between the two scales provided in the packet for the board, I would be most appreciative. To me, it seems very, very zoomed out, and it's hard to see what the appearance is of 1041 relative to the properties behind it.
you looking for the aerial, for example, aerial and properties, Mr. Green?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Green. I was thinking the same thing, so I appreciate you asking that question, Mr. Evans.
One moment.
Thank you. Oh, not that one.
Sorry, I got a lot of stuff on my screen, just trying to organize it here. Right there?
We're looking at 1041, correct?
Whoops, we are.
I like that house, though. Is it for sale?
These meetings. So what I'll do is, let me zoom in on the GIS for everybody here. One sec. Is that helpful?
A little more.
In or out?
I'd go in a little bit, just a little. Here, I think that's perfect.
If I might, one back and or at least pull the house up, so that 4406 is and then back in. Thank you. Is that what everybody else was sort of looking for too?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you very much, Mr. Evans.
Mr. Green, do you have anything else, or we can keep it up that on the screen unless you want to ask further questions of Mr. Evans?
No, I just want to stare at it. But I'm perfectly content not speaking at the moment. Thank you.
Very good. Okay. Is there another member of the board on this matter? All right. Seeing that there isn't anyone else, we're going to call on the petitioner, Mr. Lenander.
They were just seeking about a 5.5 foot variance for a rear yard setback. It's an irregular shaped lot. One side of the lot's about 30 feet shorter than the other due to the Cul-De-Sac, which forced the house to be built closer to the rear yard setback. There is an existing deck there now. It's a second story deck, which is what this would be constructed on. This is going to project about 2 feet less in the rear yard setback than the existing deck is now. And it's basically about the only place that you could put this addition on the back of the house.
Okay. Is there a member of the board, Mr. Lenander?
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher?
Thank you. A little bit tricky to see, but is the existing deck going to be a little bit smaller, or is this taking a spot on the deck, or is this right adjacent to the deck?
There's an existing deck underneath it that is larger than the room would be. and that deck will be removed underneath the sunroom with a new deck designed for the sunroom that will be smaller than the existing deck.
Okay. And the second question is, did you talk to your neighbors about this?
Yes, the neighbors have no problems. It doesn't affect anybody's sight lines. The houses on either side of it can't even see this area of the house.
Very good. Thank you.
Another member of the board for the petitioner's representative. Mr. Green.
Follow on from the previous question about what this is taking the place of. Am I understanding that essentially there's a bit of a grandfathered variance and that this is just following in place? Or is it because this becomes structure? Got it. I think I've got my answer from Mr. Eisenbacher.
The roof over your head.
Yes.
Yep, that's the difference. Got it. That's all.
Thank you. Another member of the board. Okay, so at this point in time, we are going to move on to the public hearing. If any, there's a member of the public who'd like to be recognized on this matter, please indicate that right now. I will recognize you or those of you who want to be recognized. Seeing that there isn't any person or persons, I will close that portion out and then call on Ms. Ferenc to address the board on any public communications to the board.
There's no public comment submitted on this case.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So we bring it back to the board table for discussion, inquiry of staff or our legal advisor, or possible action. Mr. Eisenbacher.
Okay, I see in page 65 of our agenda that on behalf of the petitioner, that Advanced Builders put forth a statement of practical difficulty, but they skipped a couple items. The items that are listed that they included seem very reasonable to me. I would, for the sake of discussion for our board, I'd like to move that the variance request for the petitioner for 1041 Paddock be granted for the following reasons. The applicant has demonstrated that A, exceptional characteristic of the property for which the variance is sought to make compliance with dimensional requirements is substantially more difficult than would be the case for a great majority of the properties in the same zoning district because of the shape of the property and with the curved front yard and the setback of the house from the front. B, the characteristic that makes compliance difficult is related to this property. C, it's not of a personal nature. D, was not created by the current or the previous owner. And E, the variance will not be harmful or alter the essential character of the area, primarily because, as we saw in the overhead view and as mentioned by the petitioner, it's not visible from his neighbor's the neighbor's houses. So moved.
Second.
Mr. Eisenbacher moves, and was the second Mr. Green? No.
Yes, sir.
Oh, it was. And you want discussion now, Mr. Green, is that correct? You had your hand up.
Yes, on the motion and the resolution.
Okay. To second it, but did you want to discuss at this time or no? Okay. A member of the board for discussion on the motion. Final call for any discussion by a member of the board on item 5D. Hearing none, Friends, we're prepared for a vote.
Mr. Rodman?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Desmond?
Yes.
Mr. Bossenbrook?
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher?
Yes.
Mr. McCauley?
Yes.
Motion passes. Congratulations, you have your variance. I think Mr. Rahman gets the award tonight for the most quiet member of the zoning board heretofore, but we have a couple more action items to consider, including item 5E related to 2975 Tales. And Mr. Leninger is going to present to us here again in a second, but we call Mr. Evans from the city administration. Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this is at 2975 Vales. This is also a variance request to allow a home addition to be set back closer to the rear property line than what the ordinance requires. Subject property is located in a neighborhood south of Long Lake and west of DeQuinder. The subject property is the end of Thales, and it backs up to DeQuinder. Because it does back up to a major road, a 50-foot setback is required for the home or any additions. We're proposing a sunroom addition, and according to the plot plan, it will be 36.5 feet setback from the rear property line. The ordinance requires 50, and they provided us elevation drawings and other plans that are in your packet. I'll turn it back over to the board for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Is there a member of the board who'd like to be recognized for inquiry regarding the presentation by Mr. Evans?
Mr. Chair.
Was that Mr. McCauley?
Is the petitioner, Mr. Lessinger, is there a different petitioner that's other than stated in our agenda?
It's the representative of the petitioner. Do you want to find out if the actual property owner is here? Is that?
No, we have two agenda items that have the same name on them.
Right, and that's Mr. Leninger, and he's representing a building company for both unique properties.
Thank you.
Yeah,
The
sometimes.
homeowner is also.
Well,
here.
hold on, please, sir. You're out of order. Sometimes it's the representative, sometimes it's the property owner. And then, of course, sometimes a board member will even inquire, even if there's a representative of the property owner, if the property owner is at the meeting. Does that satisfy you, Mr. McCauley?
Yes, thank you very much. I just
Thank you, sir.
didn't realize that.
That's okay. So at this point in time, we are going to call on the petitioner's representative to address the board on this matter, item 5E. Please proceed, sir.
The homeowner is also present at the meeting too, but this variance request, there's an existing raised concrete patio that has brick walls on the sides of it that he wants to enclose so he can get some use out of it. He's on DeQuinder. It's really noisy there. This is going to help cut the noise down into the house and also give him a usable deck area out there. Actually, a cement patio. And we're just requesting a rear yard setback of 36 feet and some odd inches to be able to put the addition here. It doesn't affect any neighbors' sight lines, and the neighbors on either side don't have any problem with it either.
Okay. Is there a member of the board who would like to address the petitioner or the property owner's representative? Mr. Eisenbacher.
Yes. Trying to see where you will be constructing versus existing items on the property. Is it the same spot as a deck or is it adjacent to a deck?
No, it's the exact same spot, and it's a raised concrete patio that's roughly 3 feet above grade with a brick wall all the way around the perimeter. And it would be the same size as the existing structure is.
When you say size, you mean the house size or the existing patio?
The existing patio.
Okay. So it's basically taking it, moving it up so it's equal with the floor of the house and enclosing it and putting a roof.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Another member of the board for this petitioner's representative. Unrelated to your request, sir, I'm just going to say that I've had a lot of time in that subdivision. My grandmother lived essentially at the end of that street, away from DeQuinder, in an adult foster care home. And I would say that I've never seen more boys playing basketball in one place in the city of Detroit at one time than that neighborhood. So obviously that's a good thing, keeping our young people busy. But so I just really have a simple question, really kind of, if you could just elaborate on Mr. Eisenbacher's question to you. So the walls are in place there. You want, so other than what, is it like the walls to the left and the right as you enter the area? Or are there three walls and then the back wall is the actual structure of the house?
Yeah, the back wall is the actual structure of the house. The side walls are roughly 2 to 3 feet high. They're scalloped on the top, and we'll be making those level all the way around, even with the bottom of our windows.
And then the new exterior wall would be built?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then finally, the materials all the way around on the exterior walls that are not the walls, or not, which is not the wall, which is the house and the roof. Can you just kind of do a quick aesthetic overview about what materials those are and what colors they would be?
It'll be basically all glass with thermally broken aluminum extrusions between them. And it all ties in with the color of the house, a sand tone.
The roof would be glass as well?
Well, the roof would be shingled in this case.
Gotcha. All right. Another member of the board for this petitioner's representative, Mr. Green.
Looking at this, I think I've got this right. The spot where this is, there are two things, or two points of visibility. There is a break in the privacy, I don't know, hedge grove of from DeQuinder that would have some visibility as one passed, and then also the neighbor at, what is that, 40503 of whatever that street back there is that Wessels? I don't know. Seems to have some visibility. Have you discussed with the neighbor? Does the neighbor have any objections? This is the neighbor that appears to have, if I'm seeing it right, a gravel drive.
I think that's off of DeQuinder.
Oh yeah, so maybe
right
it's a DeQuinder address. Yes, directly next to it, to past the dead end. Yeah. Has there been any discussion with the neighbor to make sure they're okay?
Yeah, I think the homeowner would like to address you.
Yeah, please.
I did discuss with all my neighbors nearby, and they are fine. And I understand that also some representative from city also met them yesterday, and he was fine with everything.
All right. Thank you. That's it from me.
Thank you.
Any other member of the board? Okay, we are going to bring this back to the board's table for our public hearing. And if there's a member of the public who would like to address the board on this important matter, please indicate that at this point in time, and I will recognize you, for those of you who want to be recognized. Last call for the public comments during the public hearing. Okay, I'll close that portion out and then ask Ms. Ferenz if there are any other communications on this matter for the board.
There are no public comments submitted for this case.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
And now we are back to the board for consideration, further inquiry, or possible action. Mr. McCauley.
Just a point of information, I also talked to the resident at 40503 DeQuinder Road, the Obers, lifetime Troy residents, and they were very fine with him putting the addition on there. Also, when I came in, I pulled into their driveway to see what it would look like, because I thought they were, like Mr. Green alluded to, that they would be the one most affected by it. With the tree line, I had to pull up almost virtually to their house to be able to see the deck area, because the trees were, you can't see it. You just can't. And so the screening I felt was very good as far as that was concerned. They had no objection to it. To me, that's my point of information. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCauley. Another member of the board. Is there a member of the board who'd like to be recognized at this time? Third and final call. If there's a member of the board who'd like to be recognized, please indicate that at this time. Mr. Eisenbacher.
I agree with the comments that have been made. In terms of the impact on any of the neighbors is very minimal. The visibility by any neighbors, including the vehicles passing by, very minimal. I believe it's in the best interest of the homeowner to keep that visual screen of the evergreens there, so I don't expect that to ever go away. Especially since evergreens can be taller and more sound abating than any fence could be. So I would like to move a resolution to approve that the variance request for, I gotta switch to the name again. The variance request requested by Thomas Langener for 2975 Thales. Did I get the right address? Yes.
Yeah.
Be granted for the following reasons. Exceptional characteristics of the property which the variance is sought is the shallowness of the property. Each of the other houses nearby are much deeper to allow them to use their backyard. B, the characteristic which makes compliance difficult is related to this premises. C, this is not of a personal nature. D, this was not created by the current or previous owner. And E, the variance will not be harmful or alter the essential characteristics of the area in which the property is located, not impair the adequate supply of light and air to adjacent property, or unreasonably increase the congestion in public streets, or increase the danger of fire, or endanger public safety, or unreasonably diminish or impair established property value within the surrounding area, or in any other respect impair the public health, safety, comfort, morals, or welfare of the inhabitants of the city of Troy. So moved.
I second.
Eisenbacher, Mr. Rahman made a second. Is there a discussion by a member of the board? Mr. Desmond, I see your hand go up. I'm sorry.
No, I'm good with it. I'm ready for a vote when you guys are.
All right. Any other member of the board who'd like to be recognized? Seeing none, Ms. Ferenz, we're prepared for a vote.
Okay. Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Desmond?
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher?
Yes.
Mr. McCauley?
Yes.
Mr. Bossenbrook?
Yes.
Mr. Rahman?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion carries. Congratulations. You have your variance. And we move on to item 5F. But before we do that, we are going to take a 15-minute break per the request of the author of moving the item 5E from 5F from 5A. And I didn't take a quick glance at my handheld device. And I guess Mr. Evans has sent us the information that the petitioner presented to us. Mr. Evans, are you aware, is the petitioner going to be back for this portion after we come back from break? Or you're not sure? Because he's not here now.
I'm not aware. But
Oh, there you go. There you go. Okay. And not that it's required, because we have everything we can, or we need to proceed. But at this point in time, we're just going to call a break right now. And so it's going to be 32 minutes after the hour. We'll be when we're back in place. Mr. McCauley, do you have something?
I'd like to have Mr. Matsny call me during the break. I have a question for him.
Sure, please proceed. Mr.
Is that
McCauley.
appropriate? I said, is it possible to have Mr. Matsny call me during break? Is that appropriate? I have a question for him.
We'll let Mr. Matsny address that. It's not a quorum issue, so we'll let Mr. Matsny address that.
It would probably be best to ask the questions when everyone's present at this point, since we've already started the meeting.
Okay.
That's what I would suggest. Yeah.
Mr. McCauley is a germane to.
It has nothing to do with the item. So
Okay.
I'll talk to him after.
If it has nothing to do with the item, then I'll call or call.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with the item.
Okay. Then I'm fine. Okay.
We'll talk to everybody at 33 minutes after the hour. And we stand at ease. Thank you. 9:33. Question of the night is, did Mr. Evans change the oil in that car behind him during our 15-minute break? But more to the end later on this evening. So we are now on item 5F, which was 5A, and I will call on Mr. Evans to present to the board any further information that you have on this that you haven't already presented.
Right, and the applicant has provided this 4-page document to the city, and before we took our break, I sent this to all the board members. You all should have this in your inbox, and also to Mr. Motzi and Ms. Ferenz. So I can show this, and Mr. Chair, I've glanced over it, but I haven't made an assessment. Perhaps the board, together with the applicant, can go as the chair would like to proceed. Evaluating this document.
So this will be the additional information that Mr. Hayden presented will be part of the public record. I do have a question of the applicant. So I'm reading, sir, the first attachment, at least the first attachment that I received from Mr. Evans, and that was the letter from the group in Pleasant Ridge, dated July 1st, 2013. I think I saw another date in the body of the letter, which was a little bit later, but regardless, that's the one I'm referring to. Subject, wetland determination 2013. So at the very, if you scaled or you scroll down to the very last page, in the last large paragraph, which is the second, or I should say the third from last paragraph, it says, regarding our communication, per our communication, excuse me, the wetland boundary flags have not yet been surveyed or located by a professional surveyor. An accurate survey will be required to proceed with evaluation and determination of jurisdiction status, an accurate calculation of any proposed site plan impacts to regulated wetlands. And I understand 2013 was some time ago, so I assume all that work was done. Is that correct?
Are you referring to if there was a wetland survey that was done? That was referred to in this letter?
Yeah,
So
all the work, that one paragraph addressing flags being put down, the wetland surveyor looking at specific, I guess I read quite a bit about the regulated wetlands and then the inland lakes, and then there's the drain issue. I'm just asking, was all that information in the short amount of time that we've had to even look at this, was that all looked at by a professional surveyor?
So all the wetlands that are indicated in this letter right here are indicated in the map that shows that entire area that was flagged, and that was done by this consulting company. And anything that requires detailed surveying of that wetland is done prior to any kind of development there, any kind of building. So that would come as before any kind of permit is issued. So that's a totally different phase of the project, independent of variance requests. So that's done later on as another phase of this, once a variance is granted, if it is granted.
So that information
But the flagging
contained in the second email attachment related to January 27th, 2017, I haven't even had time to get to. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
Essentially, is the 2013 letter like addressed by the 2017 letter or information?
Yes, I mean, they're both referring to the same thing in terms of the actual official surveying of the wetland. That gets done with any project after preliminary engineering gets done. So that's what was done to this point was the flagging and that map and the identifying of the different types of wetland, if it's regulated, if it's unregulated, and that's all in the report. So anything beyond this, there will be additional surveying done once a building footprint gets established to identify exactly what setbacks are from any wetland area, so there is no impact and there will probably be no mitigation needed.
Okay, thank you. Another member of the board. Mr. Eisenbacher? No, Mr. Green.
So thank you very much, Mr. Apahedian, for providing these documents. It was helpful, is helpful. If I'm reading this correctly, the January 27th, 2017 letter essentially speaks to and goes with that the map that is in our packet. And so I suppose my question is, it looks like the preliminary lines that were discussed, the 5 zones that were talked about in the 2013 letter, have been reconfigured upon a better assessment and flagging to actually be basically 2 zones. One extremely large one connected by a narrow isthmus, or land bridge rather, and then the smaller one at the front there. Is that an accurate read?
Yes, that's a correct interpretation. What the consultant did was they pretty much took the zones they initially referred to as 5 zones, and they just said, here's one large zone and that small zone right there by Black Oak, and they just kind of identified those as 2 separate areas because they're not contiguous.
Okay. But the one large one, it's like zones 1, 2, 4, and 5 became zone 1. I think that's right. Okay. Thank you very much. That's helpful. It's the secondary drawing, the newer drawing is more relevant, but do you happen to have the drawing that has the earlier zones? That's more curiosity than anything for comparison purposes.
Only drawing I have is the one I submitted.
Okay, thank you.
I have in my records.
That's fine. That's it from me, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there another member of the board for this petitioner? Vice Chairman Bosenbrook.
All right, get my mic. So I confess, I don't know that I've had enough time to digest this. And I'm a little confused by the chronology between the 2013 and then the 2017, although I think Mr. Green's question sort of clarified that. But can you explain, going back to the 2013 letter, and maybe you already said this and it flew over my head, but the initial zones 1 through 5, some of them are described as unregulated, some as regulated, some as clearly regulated. But then some of those zones are now apparently smushed into one. Is that no longer the case, that some are regulated and some are? Or am I misreading that between 2013 and 2017?
So the updated report of 2017, what it did was it actually took the very small areas that were considered unregulated in the 2013 report, and they just, because they were so small in terms of that area of the majority of the wetland, they took that area and converted it to regulated, because there were just small patches of area that were basically, from the report, the way I read it, they were just kind of spots. So what the consultant said was, we'll make the entire area regulated, because those unregulated areas from the initial report, they were just insignificant. So that it became more conservative to protect more of that area.
Okay. So from the 2017 report, it's treating the large zone as essentially all regulated by the state, because to the extent there are smaller unregulated pieces, it's hard to piece them out, and they're just kind of grouped into one.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. I don't know that I have any further questions at this point. I'm just trying to mull this over. So free to move on to someone else, Mr. Chairman.
Sure, thank you. I think I saw Mr. Eisenbacher at one point. No, is that correct? Yeah, Mr. Eisenbacher, then I think Mr. Green, and then Mr. McCauley. Mr. Eisenbacher.
You're muted,
You are
sir.
muted. Okay, let's see if this can work.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm still trying to make sure I fully understand the request. So the request is to have a frontage of 30 feet each, which would be the length of the drive, basically to allow each of their individual driveways to reach that extension, a 30-foot extension of road. The zoning variance requires, shoot, now I lost it. Was it 60?
80.
80, okay. But building an 80-foot road would go
85.
into wetland, or 85? Okay, thank you. Building 85-foot long road would be a road to nowhere, and it would most likely extend into the wetlands based on the simple determination we have. Again, this is a cart and horse or chicken and egg kind of thing, because the wetlands have to be finalized before construction, not necessarily for our part of the process. But we know that there's wetlands on the property. If we were to pass, oh yes, I see it on page 32. If we were to pass a variance for a 30-foot frontage for each of those two properties, and then the petitioner went back and got a different wetland determination before he went to the planning commission, that 30-foot frontage wouldn't support any more than two properties, because you just can't access more than two properties off of a 30-foot frontage. So I believe it's a self-limiting variance.
Is that a question for me?
Sort of halfway a question and halfway just trying to get a full understanding.
So,
could you use it for anything else other than two properties?
No, it cannot be used for anything else because of that wetland, the vast amount of wetland. The putting a road through there would just impact the wetland. It would remove a lot of trees, and it would basically serve just like a driveway. So the minimum impact on that entire property would be just with the driveway to each of those properties without a public road, and especially that a public road is not required. And that's actually the request, that for the variance is just for the frontage, for 30-foot frontage for each of those lots. And that property would never get developed, just like you said. I'm imposing that limit on myself to not develop that more than two properties. That will never get developed on more than two homes. It'll be split exactly the way it's shown.
Okay, thank you. I think that clarifies it enough in my head to see your hardship and to understand how this would work. Good.
Thank you, Mr. Eisenbacher, and I think it was Mr. Green next.
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. McCauley.
I'm reading the report, and maybe I'm looking at it differently, but I thought Zone 1 was the smaller zone in the northwest corner of the property, and that was the only one that was regulated, and the bulk of it was not regulated, from my understanding by reading the zoning, the zones on that. So if I looked at that, I'm looking at only the northwest corner as being regulated, the rest of it not being regulated. And also in the reports, it says it may be regulated, but it doesn't say it is regulated. So it's alluding to the potential of being regulated, but not affirming that it is regulated. Is that, am I reading this wrong?
Zone 1 actually includes line segments 1-1 to 118, 2-1, 219, 5-7, 5-1, 4-1. So it includes all the previous areas that were in the previous report, a lot of different segments. So, and then it says in the report, 2017 report, it is preliminarily described as regulated. So it's not just zone 1. It's it says this zone is less than 5 acres in size, and it includes all those zones.
Okay, so this is the interpretation by your...
The vast majority of that entire of all those zones is considered regulated based on this report.
Okay, that's no, it doesn't say that, but that's the determination by your survey company, not the DEQ, because this isn't a DEQ report, correct?
Correct. This was not done by the DEQ. This was done by the by this consulting company, and it was submitted to the DEQ. So this is per their standard. So consulting companies, when they go out and they flag wetland areas, they do it by the same standard as sending it out to the DEQ and having one of their surveyors and one of their wetland specialists come out and do it. They use the same standard, the same engineering principles, everything. They do the same way when they go out on the field.
Okay. I got a question. I got one other question for you that kind of perplexes me. My question is, why don't you just put a cul-de-sac in there and build the houses around it? Then you have your 80-foot frontage right there on the cul-de-sac. It's better for your EVA. It's better for your city stuff. Why wouldn't you do that? That'd be, was that ever considered?
That was considered, and that has significant impact on the wetland by pushing that EVA has pushes the footprint. The cul-de-sac pushes the footprint of the right-of-way beyond that cul-de-sac, beyond that dead end, 120 feet. So that goes almost a third way into that property. That's the actual right-of-way requirement of a cul-de-sac. So it significantly impacts the wetland and the green space there and the wooded area. It completely obliterates everything because in a cul-de-sac, everything has to be removed. With a private driveway, you can work a private driveway around trees and not have to actually tear down all the trees that you would for a cul-de-sac.
I don't see that, because I think if you put the cul-de-sac right at the end of the street, it doesn't do you're not extending the cul-de-sac deeply into the area. You're putting it right at the end of the street. So where your private driveway would be a cul-de-sac, which would create the 80-foot frontage that you would want. Basically, your driveways would be smaller and it would have that semicircle look to it and create that frontage. Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions. I apologize.
Thank you. Another member of the board, Mr. Eisenbacher.
I had that same concern that Mr. McCauley had, but if you look at the picture with the scale, if you go in 85 feet instead of the 30 feet that's drawn, it reaches that driveway, that straight driveway goes in all the way to the wetlands and cuts out considerable number of trees that don't need to be cut out if you go with a short extension to the street of 30 feet. So instead of going 85 feet in with a cul-de-sac, you're going 30 feet in with an extension to the road.
Yeah, but with the circle, you don't have to go 85 feet in.
Well, okay, so yeah, you do.
Discussion.
Hold on. There's going to be order here. So, Mr. Eisenbach.
I'd like to get more clarification from.
You are now muted. Last we heard was you'd like to get more clarification, then boom, it all went away.
Yeah, my finger bounced. I'd like to get more clarification from Mr. Evans for what would be required without the variance. Would it just be an 85-foot road going in, assuming that 2 parcels were to be developed, 85 feet of road to give 2 85-foot frontages? Or would it be required to be a cul-de-sac, or how could it be done to comply with the ordinance versus what's being asked?
Let me double check the definitions, because I do believe the formulas talk about how it's measured on a cul-de-sac. So I'll show those in just a minute. Let me find the ordinance.
Sure. Let me just see if I can get any short item out of the way while we're waiting. The petitioner wanted to be recognized, but if Mr. Evans' issue or information is going to address Mr. Eisenbacher's concern, then I'll just ask you to hold off. And then I think there was somebody, it was Mr. McCauley. Did you have something? Can't remember.
I had one more quick question after that, but that's.
Sure. No, go ahead. Go ahead. We have to pause you. We'll do that in a second.
My question is, why are we splitting this into? Why do you want to split this into 3 lots and create a landlocked lot? Why is it just not split into 2?
Okay, we'll put that question into queue. We'll come back to Mr. Evans when he gets to Mr. Eisenbacher's information. So it'll be a 1-2 punch.
Well, that's a question for the petitioner.
Petitioner.
Why he wants to split it from 3 to 3 instead of just 2?
Oh, I thought you were asking if it was permissible under the ordinance. Okay, gotcha.
That's petitioner's choice. Why?
Hold on one second. Hold on one second. Mr. Evans, are you close for us or no?
Getting closer.
Okay. To the petitioner, if you can address Mr. McCauley's question in a brief amount of time, please proceed. Otherwise, we'll just have you hold and we'll come back to that question.
The reason why the parcel is being split into 3 and not 2 is because I am purchasing only lot 1 and 2, and the current owner will retain ownership of parcel 3, which has an easement to out to John R.
Okay. Mr. McCauley, does that satisfy you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Evans?
Yes. So let me get in front of me here. So what we'd be looking for if Black Oak were extended is the distance between the side lot lines measured between the points where those lot lines intersect the street right of way. That's if it's not a cul-de-sac. So wherever the side lot lines intersect the street right of way, you measure that distance, and the city would be looking to see that it's 85 feet frontage and width. Now, for a cul-de-sac, that's in a different section. What it says is that the frontage shall be measured along the minimum setback line. So you'd measure from side lot line to side lot line. It would be curved and essentially the minimum setback line in the front's going to follow the right-of-way line. So the distance of that's how we would measure it. Does that make sense?
Mr. Eisenbacher?
So the length of the cul-de-sac would still be 85 feet.
No.
Not necessarily.
So it'd only be as far in as he needs for the driveways?
It'd be as far in as to get a lot width and frontage measurement of 85 feet.
So the curve of the cul-de-sac would count for part of the 85 feet.
Right.
So if you made a really big circle, and then you have a whole bunch of impervious surface, which is not beneficial to just having for 2 houses access.
Nor good for the drainage for the wetland.
Yeah.
Anything further from Mr. Eisenbacher's inquiry? Mr. McCauley, I think, wanted to say something.
Just a point of information that if you look at it, we're talking about the circumference of the circle needs to be 85 feet, not a radius or a diameter. So you're going to make that much smaller in surface area than what you're expecting because it's the thing. I don't have the formulas in front of me where I could calculate what the distance they would have to go in on in front of me. But as a math teacher, I can tell you it's far less than 85 feet. So, because you're talking about a quarter of the circumference of that. So potentially that you would need to be able to do that. So if you did a semicircle with a quarter of it being 85 feet and the other quarter being 85 feet, then that's all you would need. So your surface area is the same. And as far as that's my point. Thank you.
Mr. Green, and then I think the petitioner would like to say something. So Mr. Green first.
Since due to the nature of it, it has to come from a question. My question was going to be what you are going for. I have two, but first, to the petitioner, is your purchase of this of 1 and 2 contingent on the 1-2-3 split?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And second, it sounded like you wanted to address what Mr. McCauley was saying. I'd be curious to hear what you had to say.
So I wanted to make sure I clarify the issue of the required cul-de-sac based on the International Fire Code and based on what the Troy Fire Department requires. And the requirement is not based on the circumference that's needed for frontage, but that's a totally different requirement. And the geometry for a cul-de-sac is 120 feet in diameter from in terms of the actual right-of-way distance. So it's not dependent on how much frontage is required for a lot. So that would go 125, minimum 120 feet from that end of the road into the property, wherever that 120 feet is, and a full diameter. It would impact the entire right-of-way because the geometry has to be there for the requirement of the apparatus for Troy Fire Department to make that turnaround. So it's the restricting element is no longer what's required for frontage, but it's what's required for the fire department to make that turn, which is significantly more than what's needed for frontage, and the impact would be significantly more of the wetland, of removal of trees, of removal of green space in that area. And that's, now we're looking at what the fire department requires and not what the zoning department requires.
Thank you.
But at this point, with this request, they approved access to that road because it's so short, Black Oak, with just the variance requirement without a cul-de-sac. So they actually gave that in writing, and they gave that approval that with this variance request, they will not need a cul-de-sac to gain access to those two homes. That distance is short enough, sufficient, that there's a fire hydrant right there at the dead end, and it's sufficient for their requirements.
All right. Is there another member of the board? Okay, we don't have a public hearing for this this item, nor do we have communications, because we've covered that in the last meeting. And now we are able to dispense with this item in a number of different ways, depending on what the board chooses to do, or any further inquiries of city staff or our legal advisor at this point. Mr. Eisenbach?
I saw Mr. Boston Brooks. If you wanted to speak before anyone makes a resolution, I'd let him, or anyone else. Otherwise, I'll make a resolution to keep things rolling.
Vice Chairman Bosenbrook, did you want to be recognized? Seems Mr. McCauley does.
Yeah, just real quickly. So I'm just going back to the 2017 letter, and section 5.1 of the letter. I won't read the whole thing, but the thing that I'm stuck on, it says that one or more of the wetlands described in this report may be regulated by the MDEQ under that statute that's listed there. And so I guess it seems to me a little inconclusive. I'm not sure where it's definitive that which of these wetlands are regulated. I know it's noting that some of the wetlands in the related oak forest site are regulated, but this report seems to me a little inconclusive. Now, maybe I don't have the sophistication to understand the nuances of this, but I don't necessarily see, since this is petitioner's burden, and I'm hanging a lot of things on the first characteristic of practical difficulty. And so that's what I'm really not understanding in terms of how these zones have been shifted around. And a lot of the language in this letter seems to be somewhat conditional or inconclusive about wetland status and whether or not it's regulated.
I would share some of the very concerns that Mr. Bosenbrook just shared when I read through this during our break. I think Mr. Eisenbacher was next and then Mr. Green.
Going back to when I was on the city council here in Troy, the Oak Forest, I believe it's Oak Forest subdivision, was all those houses in that area were in very early discussion for development. And there was quite a bit of extensive wetlands investigation because frankly, the area is quite wet. And you can see on the bigger picture how there's a drain that goes through the area. And that drain has a very, it's a shallow drain and it's got a very slow drop. So the land does not drain very well. I've actually walked through this area this property 15 years ago when it was first being discussed for development, and it's very densely vegetated, as Mr. Apahidian had said, and there are extensive wetlands. What you can't see in this map is how it ties in. If you look at the aerial view, you'll notice that the parts of the wetlands that tie into adjacent properties that are not developed, where they're basically forests, you can see that that ties into another wetland because the other developer was not able to use that wetland area. So the developments are like fitted in around the wetlands. And this particular property, if you look at it in the map, has the most of the wetlands in the area. But until there's a formal determination, like Mr. McCauley said, by the MDEQ, they don't get a final answer, but that's part of the chicken and egg. Until he has a development plan, you don't get the MDEQ approval to go to the Planning Commission and get your other approvals. I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Eisenbacher. Mr. Green.
So, pardon. I think I've got a handle on it. I share some of the similar concerns that have been discussed. Not problems, or there was just a broad working to grasp this. So if I've got this, you cannot get the MDEQ final surveying and approval without submitting a plan to make that request of them. But lacking that, right now, we do not know whether or not these lands are in fact regulated. Lacking that knowledge, we don't actually know, even though in the past they were either determined to be regulated and then later determined to possibly not be, and now possibly to be or probably to be. We do not know what restrictions there will be or will not be on this lot as it stands right now, or any divisions of this lot as should we approve and move forward. As this is not a use variance, we don't consider that piece of it. What is being asked to be done with it, whether it's a cul-de-sac or 2 properties or anything else. It's just about whether or not we split it. And so as I see it, splitting it without knowledge of whether or not we're splitting protected wetlands or anything else. This isn't a determination. I don't know how to go about that decision.
Mr. Green, do you have an inquiry of a legal advisor or Mr. Evans, the city administrator's representative?
That was more for discussion. If somebody else has a way of gelling that or distilling that into a question, I'd love to hear it.
Okay. All right. I saw the petitioner raise his hand. Sir, unless we call on you, you're not a member of the board, so you just can't keep interjecting into a board discussion. Unless a board member requests you to address a particular issue or particular thing. So Mr. Rahman had his hand up first, Mr. Green. Mr. Rahman.
I was going to ask, yeah.
So my question is, I know this request came to the zoning board of appeals. So is there any reason we can have it first in the planning commission and then come to ZBA? I mean, is it something that maybe we are heading towards? It's a question to more experienced board members. Because is there any restriction that we go to the planning commission first and then bring it to ZBA for clarification?
Well, I would just say really quickly, and we can refer this to, or can have Mr. Monsney and Mr. Evans both comment, but the Zoning Board of Appeals does not require Planning Commission or City Council to make a ruling or for us to ascertain their perspective on these things. As far as dealing with issues in the future, that's why you're here as a representative of the Planning Commission to possibly make changes as to how we look at things. But once again, we don't need an approval or their agreement, if that makes any sense. And I'll just open that can of worms up to Mr. Monsney, Mr. Evans.
Right. Because in this specific case, it seems like DEQ's approval, if we want to get that, we get to have some planning commission's permission first, right? I mean, based on the discussion that I'm seeing. And without DEQ's approval, we cannot approve it because we don't know. Actually, this is the two reports that I see. They are more independent consultant provided that survey. So that's why I'm kind of thinking is it something that we should go to Mr. Apihedian, should go to the planning commission first and then come to a zoning board, or I don't know. That's something that I would like to know.
I think Mr. Monsney was going to address this. Mr. Monsney.
It's not, if these are developments of two single-family lots, it's not even clear that site plan approval is even required. This would actually probably be something for the planning director to address. But normally, matters that require a variance always come to the ZBA before they go to the planning commission. So.
And this
Mr. Evans, address anything in that front, Mr. Evans?
Yeah, it's not clear to me that this needs to go to the planning commission. I'm not aware that it does. It wouldn't be typical. Something, I don't see anything that would, I haven't vetted it for it, but typically if something does need to go before the planning commission, at least site plans, what happens is that, well, we had this with the gas station last month. You go see the planning commission first, they vet it, but they can't make a decision until the decision's made on the variance. Once the decision's made on the variance, it goes back to the planning commission. I don't know if this has to go to the planning commission or not. I'm thinking it might not. Maybe the applicant's aware of that answer, but in my time looking at this request, I never fathomed it have to go to the planning.
Yeah, I'm going to go to Mr. Green first because I think he's in a call or want to recall the petitioner. So is that correct, Mr. Green?
I do have a question for the petitioner, and then am happy to hear what he has to say as well.
Okay.
This goes back to something that I've mentioned before, the non-use component of this. For non-use, we only need to, or rather you, pardon, only need to show practical difficulty per the standards. not the hardship. But what I'm not fully understanding is the practical difficulty. I mean, so I understand that the topography and vegetation could fall into that, but how does that become a practical difficulty for you, knowing that that's there? Because if it's wetland or not is really more the question, and we don't know if there's a practical difficulty for you that we can provide redress for without knowing how the MDEQ feels about this, if I understand that correctly. Can you address that at all? And then it sounded like you had other input.
Sure. So the requirements of practical difficulties, one of them is unusual vegetation or topography of the property. And this definitely falls under that category. It meets the requirements of unusual topography because almost 50% of that entire property is wetland. And this report, section 4.1.3, actually clearly says it's regulated. So these reports have clear conclusions of being regulated. So there's no ambiguity there at all in terms of having it to be surveyed by MD. So in terms of the practical difficulty aspect of it, in this case, it's not unusual narrowness or unusual anything geometrically related to this property. That's that aspect of it, but it's the vegetation and the topography that would provide all these restrictions in terms of doing anything else with the property and encroaching into that area. And that's where the difficulty is there. That property exists that way naturally, and it's not something that was manipulated or changed by anybody. And as Mr. Eisenbacher said, this entire area, probably 40, 50 acres of it, has been under very scrutinized tremendously by MDEQ over the last 20 years. You can go back and the city has records of how many times developers have gone in there and they brought in MDEQ and they've brought in official surveyors, and this area of 50, 60 acres of it have been surveyed over and over and over. It's gone through litigation. It's been the developer has sued the city. I mean, there's a lot of history to this that shows that there is a lot of regulated wetland here. Not just this parcel, but it's the overall whole of that whole neighborhood.
Yep.
So it is
see now, pardon, to that point, I can see why you're saying that, and certainly I see, pardon, in both the 2013 and 2017 reports, the same basic statement exists. The oak forest wetlands have been observed and reviewed in the field numerous times over the past 10 years by several MDEQ staff. The oak forest development has a long history of wetland assessments and review by both the city and the MDEQ as part of the wetland permitting and site plan approval process for oak forest. The general area has a history of high early season spring water table, et cetera, et cetera. So agreed that this has been reviewed and assessed many times. However, per that same report and pursuant to what our vice chair said earlier, it says that it is preliminary in this report from the third party, from your surveyor. It is preliminary 4.1.3 zone 2, preliminarily described as regulated. 4.1.1 zone 1 is not, which is the larger section, is not specifically referenced one way or the other so far as I can see. It does not, unlike in every other zone referenced in this report or 2013, call it out as regulated or not. And so I question that. The other piece of this is, while agreed we don't need to show hardship, what is the actual practical difficulty you're presenting with the split? Because presenting the practical difficulty and saying that the property itself is difficult does not explain the split. And I recall that there was discussion last time about, whatever the current owner of the property does with theoretical future plot 3. That's up to him. And it's more about you being able to take 1 and 2 and put those 2 homes on it, potentially. But use is not part of this. That's not the point. What is the practical difficulty requiring that split?
The practical difficulty is that the extensive amount of wetland on this property, being 50%, restricts any other form of development on that to split it into 4 lots, 10 lots, or 20 lots because of the restrictive nature of encroaching in that area, even with the cul-de-sac that would have a 120-foot right-of-way impact on that. So that's a practical difficulty. There's that property cannot be developed in any other way because there's too much encroachment. There's too much. It would impact the wetland, and there's nothing that can be done. So the practical difficulty is there's nothing else that can be done with that because of the impact of the wetland, because it already exists there. A significant amount of wetland that exists here. It's an existing condition.
I'm struggling still. The current property owner of big old parcel, right? That exists, and theoretically, they could, propose the same 2 homes that. No, not the same 2 homes. It would still be a single home at that point, correct? But they could propose putting a home, or I think could just put a home on that property pending MDQ assessment if necessary. As it stands as a single large lot, what is the practical difficulty requiring a split?
Well,
it's buildable as it stands today. What practical difficulty requires that split? Because the topography doesn't. The wetland itself doesn't.
Well, actually, the lot is not buildable as it exists today. It would still require variance, no matter what, even as a 1 property to be built, because it still doesn't meet requirement for frontage. So no matter if you get 1 home or 2 homes the way I'm proposing and requesting a variance for, it still requires a variance request. So it's not buildable without a variance request at all.
But that's a use variance. That's a different thing. Sorry.
It would be a frontage variance because it doesn't meet frontage requirements. So it would be the same request of a variance that I'm bringing before the board tonight, even if I would want to build 1 home on there.
Okay, Mr. Evans would like to interject here.
Yes, there's a section of our ordinance that addresses, it's called lots of record. And if a lot or a property in a single family district was created and the ordinance changed that would disallow that property to be created, a single family home still can be built on that property, even though it might not meet the frontage or width, as long as setbacks are maintained.
So, Mr. Evans, please correct me if I'm wrong, that as you just stated it, the current property owner or whoever they sold the current property to could build a single home grandfathered.
Oops. It's not clear to me that the reduced frontage or width that it currently has would be the factor that would cause them to not be able to build a home, because the ordinance does recognize existing lots of record that were created prior to the requirements going into effect.
Thank you. That helps.
Now, we're going to go to Mr. Desmond here because he's been waiting for a while, but Mr. Green, I would caution you about using the word, you use the word grandfather quite often. And as far as all the years I've been on this board, we've been very hesitant to ever use that phraseology. And I based on recent litigation and so forth, I'm just concerned about that word being applied to any action that the board potentially takes. And I think to the point, I mean, maybe you're bringing up something that I'm not seeing just because I haven't had experience diving into that phrase. So maybe Mr. Motsney can address that, or maybe at a future meeting address what that means. But I'm just a little bit concerned when I hear that phrase. Doesn't mean that you're wrong bringing it up. Maybe I need to be educated. So that's what I'm trying to say here. Now, I'll leave that for Mr. Motsney.
I appreciate that. I'll stay away from it. I'm using it in common parlance as opposed to in a legal sense, and I should probably avoid the colloquialism.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Desmond, please.
I just had a little bit of a question here, and one of the things I'm hearing keeps coming up is the issue of future regulatory issues possible related to this wetland at either a state or a federal level. And I guess I was just wondering, Mr. Motsney, is that something that is really for us to consider or to even have as a part of our process here, what the potential future regulatory environment for this wetland would be? I mean, that seems like it's outside of just this specific variance. Am I wrong in that?
No, you're correct. You should judge this by the same 5 standards you judge any other variance. If the applicant.
Okay. We have no obligation to keep for any state or federal organizations, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. That was it. I was just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCauley.
I think that our questioning is the purpose of it is to see if there are any other alternatives to this. So that way, I'll be honest with you, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I don't like it because if I go back to the letter from our city assessor, page 32 of our packet, talking about being landlocked, parcel in there. It talks about also, let me find it here. It also talks about that there's no right of way for it, that all the utilities will have to come in through the north. And with those types of things, it's just a lot of nonconformity. So I looked at what Mr. Bosenbrook was asking, saying, I think this is pretty vague, and I agree with him. I think it's pretty vague. There's a lot of mays, could be's, potentially, might be in the reports. No definitive, this area is, which goes to what Mr. Eisenbacher said, are we putting the chicken before the egg? Because we don't have the DEQ report, which tells us specifically what we're looking for. So we're trying to find all these different avenues to say, why should we do this? And from my standpoint, I'm at the point, I don't find a reason why we should do this, my personal opinion, because I think that it's not consistent with what's being developed in the area. I look at it and look where those wetlands are, and I see a road growing through right where that little isthmus or stream-like area is, going into a larger development down the road. But this has been explored by other builders. Not every piece of property needs to be developed in Troy. That being said, my opinion is, again, I think that we're landlocking a parcel, which I don't want to do. I don't think we have the frontage that I think we're setting a precedence for something in the future. What is the future land use say? There's a stub street there. That's supposed to be made for a street. Why are we going against something that's part of our future land use? So my opinion is I don't like this. So that's my final word on it.
Right, another member of the board, Mr. Eisenbach.
I'd like to remind my colleagues of the first thing that was presented in the packet, which was the development. If he could develop it per the standard ordinance as written without any concern for the wetlands, it would be developed like the properties surrounding it, where you'd have that street would be extended and you'd have a row of houses coming off of that street. The petitioner has already come to us and said, I know I can't do that, which is why I'm asking to split it into 3. If you look at the simple aerial of that property and you look where it's even possible to use, it's very limited, given the assumption of where the wetlands are. You can't assuming that those wetlands are there and that the engineering firm over the many years has done a good, decent job of representing where the wetlands are. It may not be to the inch and it may not be to the foot, but the petitioner has conceded that over half the property is wetlands. If we allow him to split it into 3, he can't turn around later and split it into 100 because he's precluded, or 15 or 20, whatever it is, would be allowed. He's limited by it's being split into 3. And that split into 3 allows him to reasonably use his land in a significantly less dense manner, which our zoning ordinances always allow you to use something less dense. They prevent you from using it more dense. It allows him to use it much less dense than what would be normally allowed, and allows him what I believe is a reasonable access to the parts of the property that are usable, which looks like 2 houses off the stub street, and then future access to the other side of the property with a right-of-way that exists, but the right-of-way is not recognized by the city. But if you require him to have it as 1 parcel or as 2 parcels, the use of a third of the property is precluded. So I'm finding that this is a very reasonable request. I don't want to make a resolution before we've come to some sort of consensus and necessarily step on people, but I don't want the meeting to last too long, like you guys mentioned earlier in the meeting. I yield.
Mr. McCauley, then Vice Chairman Bosenbrook.
Let them go first because I'm still looking for the picture I want.
Vice Chairman.
So this is a question, I apologize, it's probably directed to Mr. Evans, and I don't want to hopelessly confuse it further, but this is for my own understanding. So if I'm looking at the variance request as printed in the agenda, is this 2 variances being requested? One is to split to the 3 parcels, and the second variance is to allow the frontage of 30 feet. It's 2 variances that are being requested. Is that accurate? I think you're on mute.
So for the parcels that are shown with homes on them, they each need a variance from the lot width and the lot frontage requirement for both those. Now the third property, needs the same thing. So I guess in theory, 6 variances are required, 2 for each property, lot width and frontage for each one.
Okay. And they all have to run together. I mean, again, this is kind of a procedural question that I just don't know the answer to, but is there a way to deal with the chicken and egg problem of granting a split and then we're not making a determination about how it can be developed because we don't know about the wetland usage, or does it all have to be tied together into one variance in order for?
Well, yeah, the board has the ability to impose conditions. So for example, if it was important for the board that if a variance were granted, that what you see here in front of us today, 2 lots, a house on one, a house on the other, the general plan with the road coming through, and then the third lot having nothing on it. I mean, the board could condition that, or at least make it very clear in the motion that this is how, if the property is going to get developed, it needs to follow what we're looking at tonight. Does that address your question in some way?
I think so. I'm sensing from all of us or some of us that there's a concern about granting a variance on the 30 feet, even though we're not clear about if it's actually been proven, but we don't know how to get there just for the petition to be able to prove it. So I'm not sure I take your point and I think I'll just stop there.
Thank you. I think Mr. Green was next.
Unless Mr. McCauley, you found what you were looking for.
Oh, keep going.
Okay. First, can I just, Mr. Evans, I think there's 7. The first is a variance to split the property into 3. Then the double for the frontage times 3. Frontage and width. So three parcels, 2 variances apiece plus the split. Is that right?
I think Mr. Evans is right. It's 6.
6. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing in the ordinance that says, and I'm just going to lay this out very plainly, that restricts somebody from splitting a property into 3 properties. So if we look at it in that sense, I think it's 6.
I ask because in the packet, what was A, now F, the phrasing is a variance to split a property into 3 properties, a variance to allow 2 of the properties to have a lot width and frontage of 30 feet. So that's 4 there, so 5. And then the third to have 0 lot and feet. That's why I asked.
I understand where you're coming from. That probably could have been worded better, but I'm sensing everybody here has a clear understanding of, what standards are asking to be waived from.
That's fine.
That description I wrote.
I stick to what I said earlier. I do not find a practical difficulty that looks for this split, or that makes sense to split this property, nor for the property as it stands to require those frontage changes even for as it stands right now. It's a non-use variance. It's not about practical difficulty to build. It's about practical difficulty in a very general way. There is nothing to build 2 homes, 4 homes, 6 homes, whatever. It's a baseline, and I don't see it.
Hey, thank you, Mr. McCauley. I think is ready.
I found what I was looking for. Basically, when I was doing my research on this, I went into MDEQ, and I was looking for wetland maps, and it basically referred me to, I think it's now called EGLE, which is the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, and it has a wetlands map viewer. I look at that wetlands map viewer, and when I look at what has been developed there in Oak Forest and what we're proposing, and saying this can't be used, this can't be used, this can't be used, there is 3 areas that were considered difficult areas to do, and one was the northwest corner, which might be protected, and then there's a section right at the front of the street coming into there, the stub street, but the most of it is developed. And if you look at the Oak Forest Drive, and that there's 17 houses in the same type of wetlands map viewer area that we're talking about for this map area viewer that I'm looking at. So there's development in that type of property. So I go back to what's our future land use? What can be developed? Mr. Eisenbacher made the point that, he can't. Nobody's done it so far. Why? Was it because the homeowners haven't sold that property because the homeowners are still living there and they don't want to give it up? Which is more times than not. Because if I look at those homeowners that live up there on those properties, 2 of them that I know of, families have been there for a long period of time. They like their property, they like their location, and I don't know why. I can't tell you why it hasn't been developed. But the fact to say that it can't be developed, I'm not completely 100% sure of that, especially looking at the wetlands map viewer and looking at where building has taken place that's consistent with that. So I yield the floor.
Well, we've had a lot of discussion. I'm not going to say we can't go to Mr. Eisenbacher now, but Mr. McCauley, you just confused me because I thought I had your line of rationale or logic earlier, and now you threw me a curveball. So I'm just trying to figure out where everyone's coming from here, and not sure I understand. That's okay. That's what the process is all about. But Mr. Eisenbacher, then we'll come back to Mr. McCauley.
One thing to clarify is that the house that fronts John R. is separate from this property. This is the property behind the frontage property. There's no houses on this property currently. It's vacant. So I believe that the choice company that owns it currently, that Mr. Apahedian is planning to, if he can figure out how to get it done, that wants to put two houses on, they're a development company. They haven't developed it yet. There was no easy access until this other subdivision went in and provided a stub street to it. But then when you look at where that stub street is located relative to these, what you could call preliminary wetlands maps, you can't put a subdivision in using that stub street. Basically, all you can do is put in two houses. But the guy who owns the property right now doesn't want to sell the whole property. So we've got a request from a petitioner who would like to use two portions of the property to put in two houses, which is less density than what's required by our variance or by our zoning ordinance. It's along the lines of what a general direction from the city has been to preserve as much wetlands as possible. It's minimal impact on the land, allows to use the land per the land use, which is residential zoning. If we prohibit him from using it for a for an extremely low density, it just doesn't make sense to me. Because he's not asking for plowing under wetlands for putting in 16 houses. He's asking for two houses off of an existing stub street, which is a very minor request. The second one of splitting off a property that's landlocked, up until this other subdivision was put in, this property existed for 50 years landlocked, other than they've got a easement off the front property. And they still have that easement for the existing land, for the existing split off property. The easement doesn't match the normal Troy way of doing business, though, as our assessor pointed out in the letter. But you can't put a road across to get to that other usable piece of property because there's wetlands in the way, and the wetlands are the entire hardship of the request. I yield.
Thank you. Another member of the board. Mr. Rahman.
Yes, I agree with Mr. Eisenbacher. I think this request seems to me very reasonable. I have a question. Like, if we approve this request, so what is the next step? How we make sure that the buildings are not built on wetland? And is there anything that, what will then, like from city standpoint, there will be some checking and making sure that it's done properly in the right place if we approve it?
I'd put that to Mr. Evans at this point. Mr. Evans?
Yeah. Mr. Evans, maybe if you can answer.
My best answer is presumably. I'm not familiar with the wetlands ordinances. The engineering department is. I would have to think that the city's not going to allow any house to be built anywhere in the city that's in violation of our ordinances.
So there will be somebody checking it, right? Somebody will go and check the property based on the petitioner's plan. And if they find that that place is a wetland, they will not approve in the next step. Is that the way things work out, Mr. Evans?
I didn't come prepared to answer that. It would seem like that would make sense, but I don't know that specific about how the city vets how a house gets built on a property that has wetlands.
Yeah, I mean, for anything with that, when we build, we submit a plan and it will be checked by the city, even for a deck, right? If it's being put on the right place.
Yeah.
Right. So there will be some checking, making sure that the petitioner cannot build something on the wetland. Is that true? From a city engineering.
I don't have it. Presumably, I didn't check to see what the development pattern would be. Presuming this would go through, it didn't seem to me. We can find out if you'd like.
I feel like this will be, as Mr. Eisenberger mentioned, that this will be a proper use of the property. You know, because you know we have to. Yes, I want to preserve the wetland. I want to preserve the green space. At the same time, if something is useful, why don't use it? Especially with this, the buildings around it. You know, so it's not going to be like incompatible to the surrounding area. So for me, it's something that we can consider. But I'm also I want to make sure that we don't allow the petitioner to build something in the wetland. So that's why we need to really check like what is the process. So but my answer is I will yield after that I like that idea to build these two houses. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCauley, then Mr. Green.
I think Mr. Monson, he had something to interject at that point.
When if the variances are approved and they want to build a structure, a permit will have to be applied for, and the building department will vet it, make sure that there's no violations of any wetland regulations. So it will be vetted.
So, Mr. Monsney, in that case, the petitioner will have to go to DEQ to get a permit, right? If there is nothing there.
If it's required. Right.
Because, you know, currently what we are looking at is the independent vendors, you know, survey results. We are not seeing anything from the DEQ. So, so what will happen is once we approve it, then the petitioner will submit the request, like a real design, and then city will request for DEQ approval, and then petitioner has to get it from the DEQ. Then it will be more official.
If it's required, right? It'll be looked into. That's correct.
There will be a lot of check and balance down the road. So we're not like okay, yeah, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. McCauley.
My last point again. I like the checks and balances in there. Mr. Evans made a point that we can put conditions on this, so that way, because I really don't know the flavor of this board. I don't know how this is going to go vote-wise. I know some people are for it and some are against it. Myself being against it. If that was what confused you, Glenn, I'm still not for it. But if we put in the conditions, so that way what we are approving does get done, then if it does get approved, that those conditions are there. That would be a minimum thing I would like to see as far as that's concerned. Then, if anybody's going to put a motion forward on this.
All right, thank you. Just be cognizant that normally conditions are put through an affirmative motion in favor of the variance, and then a no, there are no conditions, because a no is a no is a no. So, but, you know, once again, I understand what you're saying. I just want to make sure other people picked up on what you were saying. So at this point in time, I'm sorry, Mr. Green was next, and then we'll see if there's anybody else.
I don't know if I know how, but I will keep it brief. To the same thing, it actually reminded me of what had been noted earlier. Essentially, yeah, we can put in conditions. So I trend towards Mr. McCauley's position. However, if we want to do something, that we, myself among them, we've been saying we want to see what the MDEQ has to say. Because we want to, broadly speaking, we want to protect the wetland. That's the major concern here. We certainly can't usurp their power or authority. However, we can essentially layer on top of that and serve to some extent in that capacity with the restrictions that we put forward. We can essentially say we want what the MDEQ would want, and by putting that in place, irrespective of the results of an MDQ assessment, we can still ensure protection to some degree. And like Mr. McCauley, I'm not sure exactly where we're going to go, but that would be where I would come from as well.
Okay, thank you. I would just, on that point, I would just say that having worked in the state government for years, both on the House side and on the Senate side, mostly on the Senate side, I think the Department of Environmental Quality would laugh at some local board, basically rewriting out what the state mandate is on environmental impact regarding wetlands, since we don't have any jurisdiction in that regard, when the state has purposely clearly defined what their perspective is. It's kind of like the zoning board writing into a variance that the parcel in question, which is on a county road, has to meet the speed limit that currently exists for that county road. It's beyond redundant, in my opinion. I understand wanting to be concerned about all the environmental protections and so forth, but really that's not, they're going to do what they're going to do regardless of us, as far as the Lansing folks. But I understand this is a twisty turny. We've spent quite a bit of the evening tonight on this issue, and I would say that if anyone wants to be heard on this as far as a motion, then we can have further discussion on that, and then maybe move towards resolution either one way or the other, and not that we have to do that, because lack of action means the issue goes away as well. So there's a couple of different options here, as I've addressed before. Excuse me for my voice. I think Mr. Eisenbacher wanted to be recognized. You're muted.
Yes, just to get us moving in a set direction, I would like to make a motion. I want to look at the petitioner's request to see if there were any meets or bounds on this split into three parcels. And I'm not seeing that, but okay. So using our standard language, I'd like to move that the variance request for Ali Apahedian at, this doesn't have an address yet because it's just a lot. There's no house on it.
You can use the property.
Yeah, I'll use the property tax number. For property tax number 20-11-226-004, for splitting it into 3 parcels as shown in the drawings submitted to the ZBA, and for providing two of those parcels on the east side with a 30-foot frontage be granted for the following reasons. The applicant has demonstrated that A, exceptional characteristics of the property for which the variance is sought make compliance with the dimensional requirements substantially more difficult than would be the case for the great majority of the properties in the same zoning district, particularly for the characteristic of the topography, vegetation, and wetlands. B, characteristics which make compliance with the dimensional requirements difficult are related to the premises for which the variance is sought, not some other location. C, characteristics which make compliance with the dimensional request are not of a personal nature. D, characteristics which make compliance with dimensional requirements difficult were not created by the current or previous owner. And E, as written.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded.
Desmond.
Yep. Eisenbacher and Desmond. And at this point in time, we're going to have a discussion. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Oh, I'll go since no one else is. The reason that I'm in support of it basically is if what's already been said, I think it's redundant to really worry about any of the wetland specifics because it's just way outside of us within this board. And I think if they've got to deal with other regulatory bodies after this, that will basically take up all the learned due diligence for that whole planet. So as far as I'm concerned, I see no reason that personally I wouldn't, see the project just get kicked down to the next regulatory body where they get to determine and plumb deeper into if there's more issues that prevent the construction there. But as far as this level of this, I see no reason to not let them move forward and see what the next bodies think. So that's my position and why I second it.
Thank you. Another member. I would just say very briefly that I really can see both sides. I think our members are pretty smart people. They've dug into this with their claws out, and just unearthing different perspectives. I am concerned that parcel 3 is part of a greater project down the road. That's why that other property owner won't relinquish ownership for that. And then that has implications for the wetlands, but beyond the wetlands, just the general aesthetics of that neighborhood, making sure that all utilities additionally coming in only from the north. It seems to be another question that I have, or a concern, I should say. And I think that, I think Mr. Bosenbrook brought it up earlier, that there's just seems to be a lot of questions here, and it's a lot to bite off even after 2 meetings. And so just that gut check that I have, I'm going to vote no. I think that this is I'm sure it would be a beautiful development, but I don't vote on beauty. I vote on what I see as practical hardship, practical difficulty with the parcel. I'm not really seeing it, but at the end of the day, you have to go with your gut, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to vote no. Another member. Oh, last call for any further discussion. Ms. Ferenz, I believe we're prepared for a vote.
Okay. Mr. Desmond?
Yes is to grant, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher?
Yes.
Mr. McCauley?
No.
Mr. Bosenbrook?
Yes.
Mr. Rahman?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
No.
Mr. Green?
No.
4
Okay,
yes. 3 no.
I'm sorry, Ms. Ferenz. I stepped on your toes there.
That's okay.
4 yes, so
Correct.
Congratulations. You have your variance on item 5F.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
We move right along to.
Thank you to the board. Appreciate it.
Yep, thank you. Communications, and I see there's none listed, but Ms. Ferenz, do you have anything for us since this has been shared with us?
I have nothing further.
Thank you. Mr. Evans?
Thank you.
Nothing further.
Thank you. Item 7, We have miscellaneous business regarding the ZBA 2021 meeting dates. Mr. Eisenbacher has his hand up. You giving us your vacation dates at this point?
I was just curious, when does the ability to have online meetings end currently?
It actually continues for quite some time, but as of December 31st, after that, you have to have a reason to have an online meeting. And there probably is going to be a reason, so we may have to pass a new resolution. But right now, we could have them without having a reason based on the current amendment to the Open Meetings Act. But there's also work in the progress to extend that at this point, so that could be extended.
Is there any reason we need a resolution to extend at this time so we don't have to have a special session in person to extend?
Well, at this point, we're not recommending that. So
okay.
After we're doing that with the city attorney, yeah.
And then Mr. Bossenbrook brought up a very good point at the start of the meeting that the instructions don't match our current conditions. Can we have an item associated with these future with all these future meetings to have a future explanatory statement that matches our current situation?
I can put something together to present to the board for the next meeting. Definitely.
And can we put that at the beginning of the meeting?
Sure we can.
To approve.
We'll move it to item F.
Okay, anyone else regarding this portion? Hearing none, we're going to move on to public comment. If there's someone who would like to address the board on anything, not necessarily related to any business we conducted today or in the future, please be recognized at this time and you will be heard. Mr. Rahman. Sorry.
I have two things to share with the board. Number one is I had a follow-up item. Remember that deck that was close to the... So I had a chance to talk to Director Savident, and he actually will have it on the agenda for January 17th Planning Commission meeting. He thought that this is a good item that should not be a walk-in item. It should be an item which will be on the agenda, so that the planning commissioners can think about it and then have a good discussion. So I just want to let you know, Mr. Clark, because I know that I took that assignment from you. So hopefully this will be a good discussion, because I found that request was pretty interesting. It doesn't make sense that they cannot make a deck where their door is 6 feet high than the ground level. That doesn't make sense. So, Kali, I know that you are also interested in it. So we'll see how it works out. If you have time, please pay attention to that meeting. And if you can join, that'll be also great. That is the January 17th meeting that based on Mr. Savident. And the number two item is, as you know, I'm a planning commissioner. I'm here for 1 year. So my term ends with this meeting. Who knows? I may be reappointed. I will see how it works out. But I just want to let you know that if I am not reappointed, it was fun. I know it's a short, because of the COVID session, we could not attend all the meetings. I only could attend 3 meetings, but it was fun working with you. I learned a lot, even in 3 meetings. Thank you so much for all the detailed discussion that you had and the way I could learn. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Yeah, well, thank you. We appreciate having you on. I think you should share with your colleagues on the Planning Commission that because of a health pandemic, you should not be gypped out of a whole year of service on the zoning board. We would love to have you come back, but I know it's up to them. So
how it works out.
Best wishes to you. Yes.
And we've had ZBA or Planning Commission members that lasted for multiple years.
Yes. That is correct.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Nothing
everybody.
else, we'll see you around the city, here or there or wherever.
Eventually.
Any other person for public comment? I'll just say that during this difficult time when people normally are getting together, office, family, friends, people from their house of worship, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that I wish them a blessed holiday season. So enjoy yourself. And other than that, that's my last comment. Anything else by another member of the board, Mr. Evans or Mr. Motzny? Mr. McCauley.
I just want to say I appreciate each and every one of you on this board. I learn something new every meeting in different perspectives, and it causes me to pause and look at some of the things I'm thinking and look at them from a different perspective. So I want to say thank you for, even though we don't always agree, and that's okay, that we look at these things and bring our own perspective to it. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Seeing if there isn't anyone else, I'm sorry, was there a comment?
No, that was just me, and I agree. Thank you, guys. You know.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. All right. Well, we are adjourned until January. Enjoy.